Chapter 306. Spells entering formation. Zhuomo's cheeks ballooned. His eyes were round like a toad expanding its cheeks, and blew out heavily. Whoosh! A red thread of fire emerged from his mouth. Countless small flames landed like raindrops in the sword formation. Boom! The light from the sword formation exploded. Countless red sparks floating in the middle. Inside the sharp murderous intent was an explosive energy. At the same time, Zhuomo's hands flipped and the little art of cloud and rain formed. The glowing rain silently entered the sword formation. Innumerable clear droplets floated inside the formation. The water and fire were clearly divided and extremely pretty to look at. However, no one was attracted by its beauty. The dangerous presence exuded by the water and fire sword formation made everyone's heart speed up. Pooh, look, isn't this it? Zhuomo smugly showed off. This was the method he thought of. After Zhuomo had read through more than 100 jade scrolls, he found that while the quality of each was good, there wasn't a spell that made piqued his interest. At this moment, he suddenly found that he had become pickier without previously noticing it. However, he suddenly discovered that even though these spells and sword scriptures were not outstanding, they were at least varied. Each jade scroll had its own unique qualities. He had a daring idea. Could he merge all of these spells together? Consequently, he thought of formations. Different sword energies and spells contained an abundance of changes, and thus they were perfect for formations. It was extremely difficult to use different sword energies and spells to create a formation. When this idea jumped out, he knew it was possible. However, he didn't speak of it. He really desired the 6 transformations of the Great Day Mo physique from the bottom of his heart, especially when he heard Pu Yao say that it could match a Jindan Xiuzha. He forcibly stopped the impulse to make a deal, and spent a whole month to sort through every detail that he could think of before he set the trap for Pu Yao. Zhuomo's face was very smug, but his heart was beating rapidly inside. Only when he finished setting up the formation did the stone in his heart land on the ground. Dearie, he should not frequently do things like this in the future. That was too intense for Ji. How is it possible? When Zhuomo saw Pu Yao's dumbstruck expression, all of the nervousness flew away, and his body felt unspeakably comfortable. Divine summoning art. Pu Yao's eyes widened greatly as he stared in disbelief at Zhuomo. Divine summoning art? What is that? Zhuomo was confused. Pu Yao had a death stare locked on Zhuomo. His gaze was so strange that Zhuomo felt his hairs stand up. Pu, I have no interest in Yao. Pu Yao's eyes were tightly fixed on Zhuomo and he did not speak. After a while, Zhuomo really could not suppress himself. Pu, you can't go back on your word. His finger motions instantly changed. Look, I used Bright Light spell as the foundation, then Black Fire spell, and Lingwood spell, so that the wood element would create fire. Then I used the Black Days spell as the connection to create the presence of the fire-tailed tiger, which is highly offensive and vicious. In front of him, a formation that seemed like a ferocious tiger took form. A thread of fire tail was waving in the air, cold and murderous. Gao Jianting, who saw this, couldn't stop herself from inhaling sharply. With a few flicks of the youth's finger, all kinds of spells fell like rain, and the formation took form almost in the blink of an eye. What finger method was this? With her cultivation and keen eyes, she could clearly see every step Zhuomo made, but when all the movements were connected together, she could not understand it. However, the high-spirited and vicious presence of this fire-tailed tiger formation rushed at her face. She had never heard of such a fantastical method. In her eyes, the youth sitting on the boat suddenly became deep and mysterious. Was it the disciple of some big sect out on a rite of passage? This was her only rational guess. The highest-ranking commanders of the other factions also had heavy expression at this time. Zhuomo's move really was astounding and exquisite, stunning the entire place. Even though they didn't know why this youth would show this to everyone, but the factions couldn't help but start to mutter. Why do you know divine summoning art? Pu Yao stared at Zhuomo and bit out his words one by one. What is divine summoning art? Zhuomo asked curiously. Pu Yao stared at Zhuomo for a long time before opening. Then how are you controlling these spells? Spiritual power. Zhuomo looked strangely at Pu Yao. Of course it is spiritual power. This is very easy. Look. He flicked with a finger and a thread of fire flew before him. Without any visible action from him, the thread of fire seemed to be pulled by an invisible force to spin around Zuomo. You don't know how. Zuomo felt it was even more strange. No way. Shouldn't a finger method as easy as this be something that all Yao cultivate? How many threads can you control in total? Pu Yao did not answer but asked in response. A lot. Without another word, Zuomo's finger flicked continuously. Threads of fire floated in the air. In a short moment, more than 100 flames were floating around him. Zuomo's consciousness moved, and controlled these flames to perform all kinds of moves. All right. I will give you the 6 transformations to the great day Emo physique tomorrow. Pu Yao said decisively. Zuomo instantly had a smile. Pu Yao might have the track record of a con artist, but when he promised something he never went back on his word. You should first resolve what is happening right now, Pu Yao then said. Zuomo stilled. Pu Yao's tone actually became slightly friendly. This made feel very unaccustomed. Illusion, this definitely was an illusion. As he warned himself not to forget, he started to examine what was in front of him. When he looked, his body shook. What situation was this? The surroundings were deathly silent, and every person was looking at him. Even if the skin on Zuomo's face was thick, he still felt his scalp prickle. Had he been embarrassing himself in front of so many people just now? It was over. He wailed inside. However, the skin on his face was truly thick, and he quickly composed himself. Zuomo calmly asked, what's going on? When Xieshan, Ma Fan, and the others heard this, they almost dropped from the sky. They stared at each other. Boss had made such a fuss, and now he was asking them what was happening. Gong Sun Cha's expression did not change. He coughed lightly, and said to Zhongru beside him, Oh, the wind outside is strong, I'm going in to rest. He then left for the cabin. Zhongru reached out a hand in bewilderment. There was no wind. Seeing no one answer after a while, anger sprouted from Zuomo's embarrassment. He pointed at Ma Fan. You speak? Ma Fan felt very unlucky. He could hear the muffled laughs of Xieshan, Lei Peng and the others beside him, but he forced himself to fly next to Zuomo. Boss, this look. He pointed at the sky water Jieshioja in the sky. Zuomo followed Ma Fan's finger, and gazed at the sky water Jieshioja opposite them. After tilting his head and thinking for a while, he said, They are not letting us go across? When these words came out, all the little mountain Jieshioja uncontrollably tightened their grip on their talismans. Their gazes became vicious. Gao Jianting and the others had extraordinary hearing. When they heard Zuomo's words, their hearts jumped suddenly. If they had been just wary of the number of the little mountain Jieshioja before, after seeing Zuomo's uncanny formation, they were even more wary of his origins. The instinctive movements of the other Shioja subordinates made their hearts tighten when they saw it. They knew that it was not good, but if they spoke and showed weakness now, they felt they would lose face. At this time Rongwei inserted, City Master, don't be angry. Everyone must not have known that City Master and your procession would be arriving, and have overreacted. City Master, please allow this one to go forward to speak. Rongwei was very nervous. She had seen the Battle of Golden Crow City. Zuomo didn't even respect Clear Sky Old Forefather. If these people infuriated him, this place would flow with blood today. Having managed to escape from Little Mountain Jia after a struggle, Zuomo was slightly discontent at being blockaded at the Sky Water Jia entrance. He had led this group of people and survived for so long in Little Mountain Jia, and a killing energy had settled on his body. However, he didn't want to enter a conflict with the local factions, just as he entered Sky Water Jia. He said to Rongwei, Then we will trouble Miss Rong. Rongwei hurriedly flew towards the people of Sky Water Jia. Normal Shioja might not know of Rongwei of the House of the Crow Marquis, but the leaders of the 8 factions recognized her. After Rongwei went over and quietly spoke with them, the Sky Water Jieshioja in front of Zuomo retreated. Zuomo was slightly shocked. It seemed this House of the Crow Marquis wasn't simple. Thinking about how the House of the Crow Marquis was investigating the stars in daytime, Zuomo was very irritated. It wasn't a good feeling that he was being targeted by a force that had a powerful background. Rongwei came back and smiled. It is done. Zuemo had to give his thanks again. The 5 slave transporting boats slowly started and took the vast group of Xiohe into Sky Water Jia. Gao Jianting gazed at this enormous troop, worry rising in her heart. She could only hope now that these 5 slave transporting boats were not spoils of war from a direct conflict. No, she had to report this to the sect leader immediately. She didn't dare to procrastinate and took out a paper crane. After she finished writing, she channeled Ling power into the crane and watched as it disappeared into the sky. At the same time, hundreds of paper cranes flew into the sky and disappeared. As they entered Sky Water Jia, Zuemo's emotions totally relaxed. At evening, they reached the first major city of Sky Water Jia, Guangheng City. When such a large number of Xioja appeared in the horizon, they created terror in the local Xioja. Fortunately, Rongwei came out at the appropriate time to comfort them and dissipate their panic. Seeing the situation, Zuemo established camp at a mountain peak outside the city. There were no gatherings in the world that did not end. Many Xioja came at this time to Zuemo to give their farewells. Zuemo did not urge them to remain and gave them his good wishes. The sky filled with sword lights like rain that disappeared into the sky. Their individual power was undoubted after being able to survive in Little Mountain Jia. They would have good lives in Sky Water Jia. After some thought, Zuemo gathered everyone together and took the Jinji off their bodies. He looked with emotion at them and suddenly felt a bit proud. Truthfully, I had no choice but to put Jinji and everyone in the past. Fortunately, we have escaped Little Mountain Jia. Starting from today, everyone is free. You can go wherever you want. Everyone can go get 5 pieces of 4th grade Jingshi from Old Bao. The people shifted slightly, but all of them were silent. No one moved. Zuemo saw that no one moved and felt irritated. He waved his hand. I'm letting you go, so go. Finishing, he turned and left. It was night, and the moonlight was like water. Chapter 307. Bright Water City. Zuemo sat on top of a rock at the top of the mountain. The moon was shining above his head, and a Gue was sitting silently beside him. Gong Sun Cha found Zuemo. Seeing him, he could only smile. What are you smiling about? Zuemo said irritably and then asked, Where's Cheng Shidi? He's still experimenting with his Ling beasts. According to him, he's at a critical time period. Gong Sun Cha found a rock beside Zuemo and sat down. He stretched lazily. I can finally rest. In Little Mountain Jia, I didn't have one night of peaceful rest. I had thought that a battle maniac like you wouldn't need to rest. Zuemo glanced at him and mocked. Oh, that's because I was just starting. Gong Sun Cha gave a shy smile. Zuemo acted as though he was going to puke. Why are you letting them leave? Gong Sun Cha's tone became serious. Zuemo rolled his eyes. I can't support them. Do you know how great the pressure it is to feed all these people? Oh, in Little Mountain Jia, we can steal resources, but that doesn't work anywhere else. Those not in charge of the household do not know how expensive food is. To say of nothing else, you know how much Vermilion Bird Camp uses every day. In any case, we have all fought together. It's better to have a good farewell. Gong Sun Cha was the one that knew the most about the expenses of Vermilion Bird Camp. It definitely was not realistic to keep everyone. Sky Water Jia was much more wealthy and prosperous than Little Mountain Jia, but its territories had already been divided up. If they wanted to insert themselves, they would have to act against other factions. Gong Sun Cha did not fear fighting, but this way, they would easily become the common enemy of the entire Sky Water Jia. That would not be good. A lot of people would probably go. Gong Sun Cha smacked his lips as he said, People's hearts have started to change as they arrived in Sky Water Jia. This is also good, Zuemo said. The two became silent. After a while, Gong Sun Cha looked at Zuemo, and then at a Gue who was sitting woodenly. He asked, Where do we go next? Don't say something like it's dangerous, and you will go alone. Zuemo's heart warmed and said, I need to find Water Cloud Embryo. Water Cloud Embryo? Gong Sun Cha looked at a Gue. For a Gue? And Zuemo nodded. I don't know what connection I have with a Gue, but since she became like this to save me, I cannot just sit back and do nothing. That's for sure. Gongsun Cha had an expression of agreement and then raised his arms, shouting exuberantly, "For a Gue! We will find cloud water embryo." Zuo was very moved, and a smile appeared on his face. Hee, the best is if we can encounter more fighting. It makes me excited just thinking about it. Gongsun Cha said calmly. As expected from a battle maniac. Oh, where are we going to find water cloud embryo? Can we buy it? Gongsun Cha asked. Don't know. Zuo shook his head. He looked at a Gue and said, "We have to investigate." His heart suddenly moved, and took out the sound tablet from his ring. Gongsun Cha's gaze was attracted and he was very shocked. "Xixiang has kept this with you. It's been so long since I listened to it." "Yes, it's been a long time since we listened." Zuo channeled Ling power into the sound tablet. The calm voice floated out from the sound tablet, and was unspeakably intimate. Under the moonlight, Zuo and Gongsun Cha idly listened to the sound tablet, a Gue sitting silently beside them. The morning of the next day. Yesterday night was fated to be a difficult one for many people. The eyes of many people were bloodshot, some of them had heavy expressions. The number of people in the camp had been dramatically reduced. Gongsun Cha's expression was very relaxed. No one from Vermilion Bird Camp had left. The people that left were mostly from the eastern and western camps. Of more than 2,000 people, less than 800 remained. "I can fill Vermilion Bird Camp now," Gongsun Cha said with a smile. Vermilion Bird Camp did not leave and Guard Camp did not leave. The departure of the majority of the eastern and western camp was not out of Zuomo's expectations. What surprised him was the forging division. None of the Xiozha from the forging division had left. Zuo looked at the pairs of eyes below him, and was very moved. He opened his mouth, but when the words reached his lips, he didn't know what to say. "What are you all standing here for? Go back to work." Zuomo's shout made everyone roar with laughter. The sorrow due the departures had dissipated greatly. Rongwei saw this scene and her heart shook. She increasingly felt that she could not clearly understand the master of Golden Crow City. Yesterday, she had been very shocked when she heard the master of Golden Crow City was letting people leave. How could there be someone that would willingly weaken themselves? But today, when she saw the determined looks of the Xiozha from Golden Crow City, she seemed to understand. This troop in front of her was more unified and had stronger morale than the previous group. Even if they encountered greater dangers, they wouldn't easily break up. The master of Golden Crow City appeared to have weakened his power, but in reality, his primary strength had not been damaged. The organization had become purer, and the average strength had actually went up a level, and had gained strong abilities of survival. Looking at that outrageously young face, Rongwei felt it was almost impossible to believe. At a glance, Zuo did not have any outstanding qualities. But the actions this youth took frequently displayed a maturity that surpassed his age. She suddenly realized that even if the master of Golden Crow City did not have that mysterious and powerful sect behind him, he would not be one of the masses with his abilities. Just as she was thinking, Zuo suddenly turned around to face her. "Miss Rong, where is the biggest city of Skywater Jia?" Rongwei gathered her thoughts and said with a slight smile, "There are 28 primary towns in Skywater Jia. The most prosperous would be Brightwater City. Does City Master have any plans?" "Oh, I have a batch of items I want to sell, and buy items along the way." "If that's the case, Brightwater City is perfect. The biggest merchants in Skywater Jia are all in Brightwater City." Rongwei then said with a smile, "This one's house is located in Brightwater City, and have relationships with those merchants. We may be able to help." Zuo hurried to give him thanks. "Many thanks, Miss Rong." Suyu finished reading the paper crane that Gao Jianting had sent, and a shadow flashed through her eyes. Suyu was very charismatic and attractive. She was still the most attractive woman, even among the multitude of beautiful women in Hundred Flower Alliance. She had managed Hundred Flower Alliance for 20 years, and had good relationships with all the sections. The disciples under her had mostly married the accomplished disciples from big sects, and she had a deep foundation. "Let's not rashly move on this matter," Suyu said deeply. "See what their origins really are." "Yes," the female disciple respectfully responded. "Where are they now?" They reached the border of the city last night. The female disciple crisply answered. It was Miss Rongwei that brought them over. Oh. Suyu was slightly surprised and then had an expression of deep thought. She could not see what connection Rongwei had with this master of Golden Crow City. The house of the Crow Marquis was as deep as the sea, and hard for outsiders to probe. But Hundred Flower Alliance had countless eyes, and were the most skilled at spying. Suyu could see a hint. Of all the factions in Brightwater City, the one Suyu was wary of the most was the House of the Crow Marquis. The House of the Crow Marquis was usually low-key and did not attend to outside matters. The Crow Marquis himself only focused on cultivation. However, all the hints showed that there was a deep background behind the Crow Marquis. Suyu had detected this a long time ago, but after all these years, no matter how they searched, they still did not find anything. Rongwei's trip this time was the biggest action the House of the Crow Marquis took in years. Suyu smelt an unusual flavor from this. When they saw Brightwater City, Zhuo and the Shitty were slightly shocked. Brightwater City was tens of times bigger than Dongfu. The entire sky was covered in lights that streamed without end. In the sky above the city floated hundreds of islands of various sizes. The houses constructed on the lucky clouds were multicolored from the lights of all kinds of jinji and formations. Skywater Jia was more prosperous than Sky Moon Jia as expected. The other people were alright, but the trio of Zhuo, Gong Sun Cha, and Chun Yu Chung were people that were inexperienced. Each of them gaped, their faces filled with shock. Rongwei, who had been constantly observing them, felt slightly confused. These three's actions did not seem like those that came from large sections. However, she was not suspicious. Many disciples from large sect never asked about worldly affairs, so they could concentrate on cultivation. Some people would never even leave the sect's mountain for decades. She didn't show any signs of scorn and enthusiastically showed them around. Brightwater City is the best part of Skywater Jia. Almost 4/10 of this Jia's Ling veins are located here, and there are the most secret paradises here. If City Master wants to develop here, you could buy a few secret paradises. They are the best for cultivating. Secret paradises did not hold any attraction for Zhuo. His Mo physique could automatically absorb Ling power from the world, and it could process the impurities. He did not need a secret paradise. The other people also lacked interest in the secret paradises. Rongwei was even more certain now that the master of Golden Crow City came from a large sect. For normal Xiozha, secret paradises were their biggest love as well as their greatest wish. Many Xiozha worked their whole lives with the goal of owning a secret paradise. Only disciples from large sects did not need to worry about secret paradises. Zhuo's procession could truly be called vast. They had camped at an empty area outside the city. What made Zhuo depressed was that the empty area outside the city was owned. It had taken Rongwei coming forward to get the matter settled. Xu Long and the others did not have any interest in touring the city. Having recovered his youth, Xu Long's mania on cultivation was enough to make Zhuo sweat. With him as the role model, everyone in guard camp had become cultivation maniacs. The people of the forging division also stayed at the camp with only Sun Bao and Jiwei coming along. Other than that, Bao Yi was a person that could not be left behind. Considering that they should not be high-key, Gong Sun Cha still took along 3 divisions, Sky Peak Platoon among them. Even so, this procession was very eye-catching. The killing aura of Vermilion Bird Camp that had been forged through combat was completely different than normal guards. Landing in the eyes of those who understood, they couldn't stop themselves from speculating. Fortunately, Rongwei knew many people in Brightwater City, and people would occasionally come up to exchange greetings. Rongwei's mind suddenly moved, and when she raised her head, a paper crane flew over. The paper crane landed on her palm. She lightly unfolded it. When she finished reading, there was a surprised expression. The Marquis was not in the compound. The compound guard she had sent back to the compound informed her that the Marquis had left half a month ago and had not yet returned. Rongwei felt slight regret. She had wanted to take the master of Golden Crow City to meet the Marquis. The Marquis was very knowledgeable and might have been able to see his origins. It seemed like she could not do it. She was worried about the affairs of the house and bowed in apology to Zhuo. "My sincere apologies." Rongwei did not know that the Marquis had left a fortnight ago, and has not yet returned. There are many affairs in the compound. Rongwei will bid farewell early. City Master, please give your forgiveness. Hearing this, Zuemo hurriedly said, Miss Rong has helped us greatly. We are very grateful. You should hurry. We will just walk around by ourselves. Worried about the internal situation of the house, Rongwei left. The procession of people hadn't walked around for long when Zuomo's expression changed and suddenly stopped walking. Someone was following them. Chapter 308 Brute. Zuemo gave everyone a look. They all understood and purposely walked towards a less populated area. Is there a reason Sir is following us? Zuemo looked coldly at this Xiuzha wearing almond-yellow Taoist robes, with white hair yet had a childlike appearance. There were still many people passing by. When these Xiuzha saw the yellow-robed old Taoist, they all changed expression and hurriedly left. Little baby is pretty clever to have noticed old forefather. This old person's tone was very proud. Facing Zuomo's procession, he showed no fear. The 3 divisions of Vermilion Bird camped silently prepared to fight, and could attack at any moment. I urge you to not move. The yellow-robed old Taoist snickered. Otherwise, this old forefather would make you feel it. Zuemo rolled his eyes. Why did everyone speak so much these days? However, Zuemo didn't want to make trouble right after arriving in Brightwater City. He glanced at the yellow-robed old Taoist. Sir has followed us for this long. It shouldn't just be to chat, right? Hee little baby, you have a talisman. Since you can't use it, why don't you give it to this old forefather? The yellow-robed old Taoist said cheerfully. Zuemo was slightly surprised. He said, Talisman? I have many talismans. Which one is Sir speaking of? You have a pile of scrap metal. There's only one that can be considered a talisman. It should be a 6th-grade talisman. The yellow-robed old Taoist narrowed his eyes that twinkled with greed. 6th-grade talisman. Zuomo's heart shook. The number of people that knew the 9-turn sky soil disc had landed in his possession was pitifully few. How could this old Taoist know? Sir is joking. A 6th-grade talisman isn't something someone like this one can possess. Zuemo refuted. Don't pretend in front of this old forefather. The expression of the yellow-robed old Taoist turned cold, and he seemed impatient. Old forefather doesn't want to hear you blab. If you are wise, hand it over. Old forefather naturally won't forget to give you something in return. Sir means, Zuemo said lightly, his eyes turning cold. Don't think that old forefather doesn't dare to attack you because you glued yourselves onto the house of the Crow Marquis. Even if the Crow Marquis personally comes, he can't save you. The presence of the yellow-robed old Taoist suddenly grew. The Ling power in the surroundings seemed to become chaotic, and become abnormally restless. The faces of Zuemo and the others changed dramatically. Jindan. This yellow-robed old Taoist was actually a Jindan. Be wise and take it out. Don't make old forefather personally act. It won't look good then. The yellow-robed Taoist said darkly. The strong Ling pressure was like lead that pressed down on them to the point of suffocation. Zuemo and the others had never directly faced a Jindan at such a close distance. Their battle against Clear Sky Old Forefather had been in the air. The feeling now was completely different. In their eyes, the figure of the yellow-robed old Taoist was as high as a mountain. They were as small as insects, and unable to shake him. At such a close distance to a Jindan, just this terrifying Ling pressure was enough for the great majority of Ningmai to lose their will to resist. I hadn't noticed that you do have some talent. A flash of shock passed through the eyes of the yellow-robed old Taoist, and then he snickered. Pity that it isn't enough in front of old forefather. A light flashed through the eyes of the yellow-robed old Taoist. Everyone suddenly felt their body be pulled down and could not move. They couldn't even raise their arms. Everyone had shocked expressions. Power of the earth. You. Zuemo glared angrily, but his body didn't move at all. He finally knew why the other wanted the 9-turn sky soil disc. The other cultivated earth element spells. What earth element spell was so tyrannical? Xieshan gave a muffled grunt and forcibly channeled his Ling power to activate his sword scripture. Somewhat interesting. It seems you are almost at Jindan. The yellow-robed old Taoist had a surprised expression again. However, he then was unconcerned. It's a pity that your luck isn't good. Pew. Xieshan felt the Ling power in his chest reverse. He could not stop himself from spraying up a mouthful of blood. Don't struggle. The yellow-robed old Taoist looked scornfully at Xieshan. It is useless. There is just one line between us, but this one line is the difference between heaven and earth. Finishing, he ignored Xieshan and turned to walk towards Zuaramo. Hehe. Why did you have to force old forefather to act? The yellow-robed old Taoist smiled smugly, and casually walked in front of Zuaramo and slapped Zuamo's face. He roared with laughter. Old forefather's luck today is really good, many thanks to you. The Xiozha of Vermilion Bird Camp all glared angrily, furiously channeling their Ling power to struggle. They are pretty loyal to you. The yellow-robed old Taoist snickered and continued to slap Zuamo's face. But so what? Haha. Zuamo bore the pain and asked through his teeth. How did you know I have this talisman? The yellow-robed old Taoist was very proud. I'll teach you a lesson. 6th grade talismans have cognition, and old forefather knows a spell to find cognition. He examines Zuamo from head to toe. At the end, his eyes landed on the rings on Zuamo's hand. His eyes suddenly lit up, and he laughed loudly. Old forefather is getting a tidy sum today. So many dimensional rings. As he spoke, he reached out to grab at a ring on Zuamo's finger. Just as his finger touched Zuamo's finger, a change suddenly happened. This motionless hand that was wearing several dimensional rings flipped upwards without a warning, and grabbed his hand. The expression of the yellow-robed old Taoist suddenly changed. A terrifying force passed from his hand. He could not control his body and was slammed towards the other. Not good. The yellow-robed old Taoist reacted quickly. He was just going to activate his Ling shield when his eyes suddenly bulged, his figure felt numb and curled upwards. A punch that could break rocks slammed into his abdomen. Zuamo's features were twisted. Half of his face was still red as he bellowed. Gu has had to bear with you for a long time already. Bang. The body of the yellow-robed old Taoist shook. The enormous force caused his entire face to deform. After practicing Vajra Profound Sutra, Zuamo's strength had increased greatly. The present strength of Zuamo, who had a great day Mo physique, had reached a terrifying level. The flesh of Mo were all extremely strong, and how could great day Mo physique, which ranked second of all Brigadier Mo physiques, lack in this regard? It wasn't lacking, and was stronger, much stronger than Zuamo had imagined. When his body had been restricted earlier, he had held some power back. He had personally experienced the restrictive abilities of the 9-turn Sky-Earth disc, and therefore didn't panic. The power of the Great Day Mo physique was much stronger than the time he had been trapped by the 9-turn Sky-Soil disc. But no one else in his group had the same terrifying strength he did. As a single person, he definitely could not defeat the other. Zuamo could only feign weakness to bait the enemy. At this time he felt satisfaction. He had never felt that his fists were so filled with power. Each punch seemed to vent the anger inside of him into the body of the yellow-robed old Taoist. Old forefather. Ha! Don't you know Ji already killed an old forefather? Bang. Dare to steal Ji's treasures. Do you want to live? Bang. Dare to slap Ji's face. You're finished. Bang bang bang. Zuamo handed out more than 10 punches, each one landing on flesh. When a wallop landed on the body of the yellow-robed old Taoist, it was possible to see his body shake and his flesh ripple. Zuamo hadn't vented his anger yet. Holding the neck of the yellow-robed old Taoist, he threw the other onto the ground like throwing down a bag of sand. Hiss. Simultaneous inhales came from the surroundings, including Xieshan, who was injured and also looked with abject shock at boss who had totally gone berserk. Boom boom boom. The stone tiles on the ground cracked, stone flying with every blow. Pia, the Ling armor of the yellow-robed old Taoist, couldn't tolerate such brutal strikes and shattered. Zuamo's hand paused. The Ling armor of a Jindan should be worth a lot of Jinsure. His heart suddenly started to hurt. He suddenly became furious, and continued to slam the yellow-robed old Taoist into the ground a dozen more times before he stopped. He raised his head with satisfaction, one hand holding the neck of the yellow-robed old Taoist, and turned to face the other people. Are you guys okay? Whoosh, everyone simultaneous stepped back. There wasn't any anger left in their eyes. They looked with sympathy at the yellow-robed old Taoist that was being held by the neck by Zhuo like a rabid dog. The pitiful yellow-robed old Taoist was not shaped like a person anymore. He was completely swollen from the beating and was unconscious. Pitiful, so pitiful. They had never seen such a pitiful Jindan. One that had been punched to the point of being misshapen. They should never offend boss. Even a rough man like Lei Peng was pale with fright like a little girl, his heart shaking rapidly. Zhongru, who had once taught boss Fist scriptures, had an ashen face. He dared to guarantee that he had not taught this. What was wild? What was brutish? What was savage? In comparison to using brute force to hit a Jindan to the point of unconsciousness, becoming misshapen due to swelling of the entire body, and leaving compound fractures. We are Xiuzha, we specialize in techniques and Ling. So when boss turned with a reddened face, his face ferocious as he panted, they all retreated a few steps. Zhuo glanced at the yellow-robed old Taoist that he was holding, and felt very good inside. He finally caught a Jindan this time. He had promised to give Pu Yao a golden core. He hadn't expected that he would encounter such a stupid Jindan today. At this time, he completely forgot how he was completely suppressed before. Back to the camp. He waved his hand grandly and flew at the front. Far from where they were, Suyu's face was slightly pale. It was the first time she had seen such a savage and brutish person. When she had seen the yellow-robed old Taoist go to make trouble for Zhuo, she had taken note. She wanted to see just how powerful this group was, but there was much to be wary of. The appearance of the yellow-robed old Taoist was a great opportunity. She recognized the yellow-robed Taoist. This person was vicious and cruel and had killed many people. Even other Jindan Xiuzha were wary of him. The beginning of the incident did not deviate from her imagination. Anyone that had a bit of common knowledge knew the difference between Jindan and Ningmai. She even felt that Zhuo wouldn't dare to rebel, and obediently give up the talismans. When the yellow-robed Taoist had activated his spell, she had secretly shaken her head and sighed. This master of Golden Crow City really wasn't a smart person. But the scene immediately after struck her dumb. The master of Golden Crow City had suddenly moved and grabbed the yellow-robed old Taoist. Without using any Ling power, definitely without any Ling power like a street-roaming gangster, he had beat down a Jindan with his fists. But the fist that had no Ling power actually had beaten the yellow-robed old Taoist to the point of being misshapen. Was he a body-cultivating Xiuzha? What stage had he cultivated to in order to be able to beat a Jindan Xiuzha to this state? The simple and rough barrage from the master of Golden Crow City made her pale and uncontrollably feel a threat of fear. This was a true brute. Chapter 309. The Greatest Gain. At the camp. Can't you go faster? Pu Yao impatiently urged from behind him. What are you rushing for? Let me see if I missed anything. Zhuo searched the body of the old Taoist one more time in great detail, to prevent anything from being left behind, before reluctantly throwing the old Taoist to Pu Yao. Pu Yao hurriedly turned into a black wind that took up the old Taoist and disappeared. So pitiful. Zhuo shook his head in sympathy, but when his eyes returned to his spoils, his face instantly filled with smiles. Fighting against a Jindan was a painful process, but inventorying the spoils was the best experience. Whoa. There wasn't much on the body of the old Taoist, but to be seen to have value in the eyes of a Jindan, those items naturally were not ordinary. A string of mother and child copper bells, a blue stone about the size of his palm shaped like a mountain, and 3 jade scrolls. Zhuo first took out the mother and child bells. The big and small yellow copper bells were strung together with a red string. Zhuo found it interesting and swung the copper bell. Dong. Zhuo seemed to be hit full-on by a wild beast. Before he could react, he was thrown back multiple zhang. After a while, Zhuo shook his head as he climbed up and spat out the sand in his mouth. His eyes were bright as he stared at the bells on the ground. Such a powerful talisman. If he did not possess the great Damo physique, he probably would have died right there. It was the first time he saw such a strange sound-type talisman. Most sound-type talismans enchanted the mind, and those that were stronger could directly attack the soul. These mother and child bells could physically attack. Strange. It was too strange. Zuomo carefully picked up the mother and child bells, his consciousness prying into it. The best way to understand a talisman was to use the consciousness to inspect it. When his consciousness entered the copper bells, Zuomo felt his vision shift and was situated in an empty space. Countless complex and ancient seal scripts swam around him. They seemed to be alive as they spun freely. Even if Zuomo could be considered to be knowledgeable, his head was dizzy when he saw these seal scripts. Not far from Zuomo was a round ball about the height of a person. It was made from dense layers of complex seal scripts wrapped together. That was a jinji. How many jinji had people put down over the big ball? Staring at the round ball covered in jinji, Zuomo suddenly became curious what was being contained inside this round ball. Was the thing inside this round ball of jinji perhaps the crux to controlling these bells? How had the enormous force that had thrown him back been released? These seal scripts? Or what was contained inside? He was a bit uncertain, but he didn't dare to move rashly now. The seal scripts flying in the surroundings were outside of his knowledge of the field. If he accidentally became trapped, he was not certain that he could escape. Withdrawing his consciousness from the copper bells, Zuomo still felt fear. He couldn't make a good judgment about the grade of this talisman, but it definitely was above 5th grade. His intuition told him that it was very dangerous. Out of caution, Zuomo decided to temporarily put it aside. The old Taoist that he had defeated probably hadn't understood how to use it either. Zuomo's attention then landed on the mountain-shaped blue rock. When he held it, he was very shocked. It was very heavy. This rock that was the size of his palm weighed a terrifying 2,000 caddies. Zuomo instantly became excited. This was another powerful talisman. He couldn't help but examine it. Countless seal characters could be seen on the surface of the mountain. They were as thin as strands of hair, and displayed the extraordinary skill of the forger. Zuomo channeled Ling power into it. On the surface of the blue rock were the words, "Evil subduing," in bright cinnabar. The small mountain quickly grew to a height of 5 zhang. Zuomo's mind moved, his finger pointing upward as he shouted, "Seal!" The mountain suddenly appeared at the location that Zuomo's finger was pointing to and slammed down. Boom! The earth shook, and Zuomo was almost knocked down. The strong air wave carried the dust as it swept past like a twister. The entire camp was alarmed by such a loud noise, and many figures flew towards this place. When everyone saw this blue mountain that was half buried in the ground and the spiderweb-like cracks radiating outwards, they shouted in shock and were dumbstruck where they stood. "Ichem, you can all go. Go. I'm trying out new talismans." Zuomo sent everyone away, ran to the little mountain and stared with intoxication at the cinnabar red words, "Evil subduing," written on the surface. Good treasure, very good treasure. If this dropped down and hit, even a Jindan Xiozha would be turned into a pancake. Even if it just brushed past, that would result in a broken limb at least. This evil subduing peak was a 5th grade talisman, and Zuomo could not stop caressing it. 5th grade talismans had to have formation techniques. If it was this powerful when used normally, he didn't know what the formation technique would look like. He still put the evil subduing peak back into the ring. The investigation of the formation technique wouldn't be easy, and would take a long time. After 2 great talismans, Zuomo's curiosity had been stirred to a peak. He was full of anticipation towards the 3 jade scrolls that remained. Taking out the jade scrolls, he read through them one by one. The first jade scroll recorded the spell that the yellow-robed old Taoist had cultivated. Heavy Earth Spell. It was a rare 6th grade earth element spell. This was astounding to Zuomo. Higher-level spells belonging to the 5 element were very rare in the Kunlun realm, as it was dominated by Swordshio. He quickly found the move that the yellow-robed old Taoist had used in Bright Water City. It was called Heavy Earth Restriction. In an instant, it could manipulate the earth element power under the ground, and to produce a restrictive effect. Other than this, it had many other abilities that made Zuomo afraid as he read. If the other had not been careless today, and been trapped in close combat, it was hard to say who would win. Jindan Xiozha that were skilled in 5 element spells were completely different than Jindan Swordshio. Even though their attacks were not as powerful as Sword Xiao, but their moves had more variation. Zuo decided that he had to practice the heavy earth spell. His talent in the 5 elements wasn't just a bit stronger than his talent in the sword. The second Jade Scroll made Zuo's mind jump again. It recorded the imprinting and usage instructions for the evil subduing peak. Zuo was entranced as he read and was extremely joyful. This evil subduing peak was made from 130,000 caddies of 3rd grade sky blue rock, and was processed hundreds of times to remove the impurities before finally being reduced to 10,000 caddies of the essence. The Jade Scroll also recorded the formation techniques of the evil subduing peak. The description was so strong that Zuo's heart itched. Evil subduing peak was a talisman like the heaven-turned seal. These types of talismans usually were powerful, but had all kinds of weaknesses. For example, this evil subduing peak had to be held in the hand of the Xiaojia to be used. But it was a terrifying 10,000 caddies heavy. Even if it was not activated, it was still 2,000 caddies heavy. Those that had weak bodies did not have the power to use it. The yellow-robed old Taoist had possessed this evil subduing peak for a long time, but due to this restriction, he could only leave it in the corner of his ring. But this was perfect for Zuo. His Great Daimo physique was very strong. Not to mention just 2,000 caddies. Even if it was the full 10,000 caddies, he could hold it up. If he also practiced the heavy earth spell, and used the two together, the power would further multiply. The Jade Scroll also recorded how to process it further. Zuo swept over it and put it back into the ring to start reading the last Jade Scroll. The last Jade Scroll was a Jia map. This Jia map was bigger than the one Zuo had copied from Rongwei. This shocked Zuo. He guessed that the yellow-robed old Taoist had gotten this Jia map from somewhere else, and this was not charted by himself. There were more than 500 Jia marked on the Jia map, including some Jia that were in very faraway locations. Zuo seemed to be able to trace the trips the maker of this Jia map had taken through his life. Many of the routes penetrated deep into obscure places. The information written about each Jia were also very detailed. Zuo couldn't help but feel respect. To have gone to so many places, this Xiaojia definitely had been very powerful. Following the Jia map, Zuo read the information on each Jia one by one with interest. When he found an intermediate Jia called Cloud Sea Jia, a note written about it instantly made him freeze where he stood. At the deepest parts of the water cloud sea, it is possible to hunt for water cloud embryo which has the ability to heal and nurture the soul. Water cloud embryo. Zuo felt overjoyed. The previous talismans and spells could not make him as happy as this piece of information. Water cloud embryo was in Cloud Sea Jia. Cloud Sea Jia. Zuo's eyes were bright. He instantly found the position of Sky Water Jia, and quickly found a route that led to Cloud Sea Jia. This was a very long route. The route passed through 7 intermediate Jia and 26 small Jia. He had never thought there would be a day that he would need to go to so many places. But he had no fear or timidity. He needed to find Water Cloud Embryo and heal a Gui. A Gui sat silently, Silly Bird, Lil Pagoda, and the others were surrounding her as they played happily. Ever since a Gui had been injured, the terrifying presence around her had disappeared. Silly Bird and the others did not fear her at all. And in reverse, they were very close to her. Lil Fire liked to roll around on a Gui's body, and Lil Black liked to hang on a Gui's hair. Lil Pagoda liked to circle around a Gui. What made Zuo feel was the least believable was Silly Bird. This bird, for some reason, was extremely good to a Gui, and was even willing to let a Gui ride her. This was a benefit Zuo could not even imagine. It might have been a delusion, but Zuo felt that after having the 4 keep her company, a Gui's wooden face seemed to have a hint of life. Zuo looked at this scene, and felt unusually warm. Suyu soullessly returned to the sect. The scene that occurred earlier in the day was still affecting her mind. She had led the 100 Flower Alliance for more than 20 years, and saw every kind of scheme and plan. But it was the first time she had seen such a straightforward and brutish battle. It seemed that she was only suited to behind-the-scene tactics. She smiled mockingly. Sitting down and taking a drink of Ling tea, her spirit sudden felt slightly better. At this time, a female disciple ran in a panic. Sect leader. Not good. Shimmy was killed by Sky No. 1, and he ran away. Suyu smashed her teacup that she had raised to her lips to the ground, her eyes wide as she lectured angrily. What are you standing there for? Go pursue him. You crowd of trash. If you can't get him back, all of you don't need to come back. I do frequently translate on the bus, but when it's crowded, I can't type on the computer, so the phone is my alternative. As all of you have said, Pu Yao finally gets his golden core. He's really desperate at this point. Doesn't this chapter of Zuo sighing over talismans bring back memories of being at Wukong Mountain? Zuo has greatly improved from the guy who couldn't haul his ling grains up the mountain. Cloud Jia was also the place that manufactured the cloud formation Silk, the second elder of the outer hall used in battle. Zuo's plot armor is at work. The map he needed just happened to drop into his lap, after some effort. Chapter 310. The past grievances. Xu Long surveyed guard camp, and saw everyone was working hard at their cultivation. He couldn't help but have a satisfied expression. He knew very well how lacking their talent and foundation was. Only hard work could make up for their shortcomings. The guard camp was completely made up of Xiao slaves. They had encountered countless hardships, their personalities were resilient and exemplified persistence, and they were very reliable. He would try to fulfill any of Pu Yao's demands, no matter how difficult, and urge the others to meet the demands. Over the span of a few months, the guard camp had comprehended the benefits from the previous breakthrough, and now their overall strength had risen a level. The black armor each person wore was even more exquisite, and their shapes had slowly changed. There were now slight differences on each person's armor. Some were broad, others were slender and symmetrical, just like how people were very strong and others were nimble and speedy. After the preliminary stages of cultivation, they had started to develop in different directions. This was an unavoidable result of the intermediate stages of cultivation. Any kind of spell or emo skill would diverge this way. As the one closest to Pu Yao, Xu Long received the most instruction from Pu Yao. No one could rival his strength in guard camp. Even though he had not sparred against the experts from Sky Peak Platoon, everyone secretly speculated that while Xu Long's strength could not match that of Xie Shan and Ma Fan, he shouldn't be far from Nian Lu and Lei Peng. Everyone underestimated him. Emo skills were dangerous. The slightest carelessness and one's life would end and their soul shattered. However, if one could overcome that, the speed of progression was not anything that the Xiaozhi's Ling cultivation or the Yao's spiritual cultivation could rival. Xu Long's entire life had been full of hardship and suffering. These experiences were like fertilizer to the hardship guard, emo skills. As a result, his journey of cultivation was smooth and rapid. Even though he was stern about urging everyone to cultivate, but his actual personality was warm and disliked conflict. Cultivating the emo skill had recovered his youth, but his personality had not changed. The laid-back attitude unique to middle-aged people showed itself on his body. The camp that guard camp made was a long and narrow crescent that shielded almost all of the camp. A light suddenly flashed through Xu Long's eyes. He made a hand motion to the camp guard beside him, and then walked towards the outside of the camp. Outside the camp was a dense forest. His ears were very sharp and he heard noise in the woods. There seemed to be many people that were approaching them. Dozens of camp guards tightly followed behind him. The camp guards were wary but not nervous. After the Battle of Golden Crow City, especially after how dangerous and difficult the battle was, it was possible to see their improvement. The sound from the woods became increasingly clear. This time the other camp's guards also detected it. Everyone stared at the woods waiting for the appearance of the unwelcome guests. Whoosh, a person covered in blood came out of the woods. Xu Long was slightly surprised. However, when he saw the face of this person, his pupils suddenly shrank. A one. When the camp guard beside him saw the person, he couldn't help but exclaim. The person covered in blood heard the exclamation. His body shook, and he raised his head in confusion. A one, heavens, is it really you? A one, you are still alive. Everyone was exceptionally excited. They all recognized this youth covered in blood. The eyes of the youth were confused as he looked at this crowd of people dressed in black armor. Even though he did not recognize them, but they gave him a feeling of familiarity. We can talk later. Tianmu, take a one to the back. Everyone else, prepare for battle. Shulong's voice was steady and methodical. His handsome face was serene, but a sharp cold light flashed in the deepest part of his eyes. When the youth heard the name Tianmu, his entire body shook. He raised his head to look at the large male in black armor in front of him. Tianmu, big brother Tianmu? Tianmu grinned, but it was slightly murderous. Little a one, big brother will help you beat whoever bullies you. A familiar voice and tone allowed the youth to truly believe that this unfamiliar large male in front of him was really big brother Tianmu. At the end of his strength, the youth fainted in Tianmu's arms. No one spoke, but threads of black energy came out everyone's armor and wrapped around their legs, waist and wrists. Looking at Wen's terrible state, there seemed to be a ball of fire burning in everyone's chests. Only Shulong was motionless without any killing essence coming from his body. Whoosh, whoosh, a crowd of female Xiao charged out of the woods. At the same time, a crowd of female Xiao appeared in the sky. When the leader of this group of female Xiao saw Shulong, she had a wary look. When she saw a one in Tianmu's arms, her gaze became sharp and she said, "Why had Sir taken this Xiao slave which has escaped from our sect?" When he saw this female, Shulong could not control his killing essence any longer. Multiple threads of black energy suddenly shot out of his body like fire and covered his body. He recognized this face. Bai Rufun. Of the females that had been in charge of the Xiao slaves, this female's temper had been the worst. Just a little bit of unhappiness, and she would vent on the Xiao slaves. No less than 50 of Shulong's fellows had died at her hands. Kill. Shulong's cold voice disappeared in the air. His figure also disappeared from where he stood. The female disciples of Hundred Flower Alliance never thought the other side would act without even exchanging words. With their guard down, they were instantly at a disadvantage. Not just Shulong, but the other camp guards also recognized the female Xiao in front of them and their origins. Each of them had blood-filled eyes as their murderous aura grew. Shulong suddenly appeared next to Bai Rufun like a ghost. His right hand chopped, and a black energy sliced towards Bai Rufun's white face like a blade. At the same time, a thread of black energy flew from the tip of his foot and silently wrapped towards the other's right leg. Bai Rufun paled. The other's first attack was a killing move that did not show any mercy. Panicking, several balls of snowy white plum blossom sword energies came from the flying sword in her hand and shielded her. However, the others were approaching too fast and collided heavily with the sword energies. Bai Rufun was overjoyed, but when she saw the plum blossom sword energies passing through the other's body, her face turned snowy white. Not good, it was an afterimage. Her foot was suddenly in great pain. She didn't even have the time to call out in pain when her neck suddenly hurt. She suddenly felt the world in her vision spin. Then she saw a headless body continuously sprouting fresh blood. The wails echoed. When had the female Xiao from the Hundred Flower Alliance ever experienced such a bloody and murderous scene? In the midst of their terror, they lost their lives. In the blink of an eye, corpses covered the ground. The faces of the Hundred Flower Alliance Xiaozha were all pale. Many people uncontrollably screamed and frantically fled. Shulong raised his head to look at the sky. He picked up a rock from the ground, his body pulling back like a bow, and threw the rock hard. Hummum! A soul-shaking howl suddenly sounded. The piece of rock penetrated a female Xiao through the heart, and blood sprayed through the air. This female Xiao had forgotten to activate her Ling armor as she had been too afraid. Shulong's throw frightened the other people into fleeing even faster. Shulong stopped his fellows that were preparing to give chase. The hardship guard, Emo skill was powerful, but it had a flaw in that it was not good at flight. This weakness would only disappear when they reached a much more profound stage in their cultivation. Returning to the camp, the first thing Shulong did was to report this incident to Zhuamo. He knew that this incident was very significant. This time, they had severely offended Hundred Flower Alliance, and likely caused the start of a battle against Hundred Flower Alliance. After Zhuamo heard Shulong's report, he did not give blame, but said, "Was there anyone left alive?" Shulong stilled. "There is one. Go immediately to find where Hundred Flower Alliance is located." Zhuamo's expression was stern. "We will attack first, we cannot give them the time to recover." Otherwise, we will be in danger. Shulong was shocked. He had originally assumed that boss would blame them, but he hadn't expected that boss didn't assign any of the blame on them, and even decided to attack first. He pressed his lips together, and immediately turned around. Gong Sun Cha shook his head. This is great trouble. The local powers of Bright Water City had been wary of so many of Xiuzhi appearing. Now that they had a conflict with Hundred Flower Alliance, the situation was extremely disadvantageous to them. Nothing to worry about. If we don't give them the time to react and finish the fight fast, we can safely leave before everyone else reacts. Zuemo wasn't concerned. You don't blame them? Gong Sun Cha asked curiously. Shixiang's decisiveness was unexpected to him. I don't blame them. Zuemo shook his head and said in a matter-of-fact voice, Shulong and the others are our people. They have a deep and bloody grievance against Hundred Flower Alliance. Who do we help? Of course we help Shulong. Also, the people wrong in this incident isn't Shulong and the others. If it was me, I would definitely have charged all the way to Hundred Flower Alliance. However, it isn't too late now. The camp started to quickly move. No one panicked. Even the Xiuzhi from the forging division had calm faces. When they had set down camp, everyone had known that this would only be a temporary camp. The majority of their possessions were still on the slave transporting boats, and hadn't been moved to the camp, which now saved them labor. In 2 hours, everyone had boarded the slave transporting boats. The 5 slave transporting boats slowly rose in the sky and flew into the southeastern part of Bright Water City. Such a big action naturally could not be concealed from the eyes of the local powers, and Zuemo didn't plan on concealing it from them. His thought was very simple. With the fastest speed possible, finish the battle. Their grievances with Hundred Flower Alliance could not be resolved. A local power like Hundred Flower Alliance that was well rooted in this place could gather a terrifying amount of support, if they had enough time. To the other powers, they were the outsider. Zuemo displayed the decisiveness of a leader. He did not hesitate, and decided to attack Hundred Flower Alliance first. Suyu listened to the report with a dark face. She could have never thought this mysterious power was so savage. They had attacked without giving an opportunity to speak, as though they had held a deep hatred. She would never have guessed that the entire guard camp were Xiu slaves they had transported to Little Mountain Jia. Now that the two sides had reached such a step, there was no room to negotiate. She was wary of this mysterious troop, but she wasn't afraid. As one of the largest powers in Skywater Jia, how could Hundred Flower Alliance stand being humiliated so? How many of the elders are in the sect? She turned and asked one of her disciples. Elder Wang, Elder Mei, and Elder Shao are all present, the disciple instantly replied. Su Yu's heart was reassured. Invite them for a discussion. You shall personally go to ask. Chapter 311. At the door, Elders Wang, Mei, and Shao quickly hurried over. What matter has sect leader in such a fuss? This old woman is slightly curious. Elder Mei's voice was piercing. Before she arrived, her voice could first be heard. Elder Mei's face was hideous and her temper was the most explosive. Of the 3 people, she had been the oldest person when she reached Jindan, and her composure was the worst among them. Elder Wang was wearing a blue robe, her face friendly and had a cheerful smile. She looked very friendly and approachable. Elder Zhao's eyes rippled with a seductive look. She was actually even younger than Suyu, and she was a peerless beauty. Yes, it's rare that sect leader will call all 3 of us together. Has something major happened? Elder Zhao's voice was sweet, endearing, and alluring. Elder Wang said warmly, if sect leader has a problem, please tell us. We receive benefits from the sect daily, and won't refuse if it is time for us to help. This disciple thanks the 3 elders. Suyu bowed gracefully to the 3 elders, her attitude respectful. The biggest reason that she was in charge of Hundred Flower Alliance was that she had the support of the 3 elders. The 3 elders calmly received the bow and did not refuse. After standing up, Suyu narrated what had happened today. Sky number 1. Based on our sect's tradition, he shouldn't be lower than 6th grade. Elder Shao was slightly surprised. 7th grade, Suyu said and then continued. This Xiu slave called a one is exceptional and of rare innate talent. He first caught our attention when he showed himself in a group of 4th grade Xiu slaves. This disciple then put him among a group of 5th grade Xiu slaves. In an extremely short amount of time, he outcompete them. Just a while ago, he won out of a group of 6th grade Xiu slaves. This disciple had been preparing to send him to elders after some more time. No matter if it is as a slave soldier or as a living cauldron, it would be very beneficial. Elder Zhao's eyes lit up as she laughed lightly. Jie cannot steal from me. This Mimi just needs a good cauldron, and I can break through the stage of first stratum. This old one has no interest in Xiu slaves, Elder Mei said coldly. Elder Wang smiled and said, then I will wish for Mimi to break through first stratum soon. Maybe Mimi will be the first one among us to first break through to the level of first stratum. Mimi thanks Jie. Elder Zhao's expression was blissful. But this master of Golden Crow City could grasp old man Shui. He is not to be dismissed, Elder Wang said gravely. What are you afraid of? They really don't want to live. Elder Mei sneered coldly. He should be a body cultivator. The probability of him being a Diana Xiu is the highest. At that time, get Xiao to go. Her skyflower fall is perfect for dealing with those people. Good. Elder Xiao laughed prettily as she clapped her hands with a light smile. She was receiving the most benefits this time, and naturally was willing to put in more effort. Do they have any other Jindan? Elder Wang asked. No. This disciples personally saw them, and did not find any other Jindan, Suyu said confidently. Don't even have a Jindan and they dare to be so arrogant. They are looking for death. Elder Mei said hatefully. A disciple suddenly stumbled in. Sect leader. Someone has attacked us. Suyu was suspicious that she had heard it wrong. Someone had attacked them? They dare. Elder Mei was infuriated. This old one will use them to make Dan. As her words landed, she stomped her feet and disappeared. The other 2 elders had unfriendly expressions as they disappeared at the same time. Zuo looked at the mountain valley below. Hundreds of flowers were blooming, red and purple, to form a beautiful sea of flowers. Even in the air, it was possible to smell the fragrance. This place was the base of 100 Flower Alliance, 100 Flower Valley. 100 Flower Valley produced all kinds of valuable Ling flowers. The flower-type talismans and Lingdan that they forged were deeply liked by female Xiu and easy to sell in the market. Zuo was just going to give the order to attack when 3 female Xiu suddenly appeared in the air. Jindan. 3 Jindan. Zuo was not surprised by the appearance of Jindan. If an enormous sect did not have several Jindan, that would be a joke. Compared to Little Mountain Jia, when he had felt hopeless at the mention of a Jindan, the halo around Jindan had disappeared. Jindan were just Xiuzhe that were slightly more powerful than Ningmai. There was nothing major. After meeting more of them, he could even give a general judgment on how powerful a Jindan was. Unfamiliar the first time, familiar the second. Fighting against Jindan wasn't an exception. Zuo compared the 3 Jindan in front of him with Clear Sky Old Forefather, and felt they were very lacking. He couldn't help but sigh inside at the power of Clear Sky Old Forefather. The Jindan that he had successively met were all a far cry from Clear Sky Old Forefather. It seemed that while they were all Jindan, the skill level difference was large. Thinking back to it, the strength of Wukong Sword Sect wasn't just strong. Xian Yan Shirshu wasn't lacking in power compared to Clear Sky Old Forefather. Suyu quickly appeared behind the 3 elders. When she saw Zuo, she instantly became furious. She shouted harshly, Golden Crow City Master. You have gone too far. To say nothing of stealing this sect's Xiu slave, you actually attack our sect? You really think that my 100 Flower Alliance has no one? The 3 elders didn't know who had come, but when they heard the person in front of them was the master of Golden Crow City, they were all angry. Elder Mei's temper was the most explosive as she shouted. You are seeking death. The heaven has a road that you don't walk. Hell has no door but you come. Little bastard, if I don't destroy your soul today, this old one isn't called Mei. Zuo rolled his eyes. The other was not polite, so he naturally wouldn't be polite. He spat and said scornfully, Old fart, your mommy is calling you to brush your teeth. Elder Mei exploded and disappeared in the sky. This old one will tear your mouth. Wuz. More than 10 figures charged towards the empty space in front of Mo like sharp arrows. The 15 members of Sky Peak Platoon drew out 15 crisscrossing straight lines like an enormous net which covered the area 30 zhang in front of Mo. This enormous net seemed to suddenly explode. Countless sword essences were like multicolored lines that howled with a soul-shaking sound as they filled the holes in the net. 15 different kinds of sword essence filled the multicolored net with a dangerous presence. Elder Wang and Elder Zhao's faces were heavy, and Su Yu's expression changed slightly. Sword essence. 15 Xiuzha, who had comprehended sword essence. In the entire 100 Flower Alliance, other than the elders, there were just 8 people among the disciples that had comprehended sword essence. The other side just sent out 15 people that were all Xiuzha, who comprehended sword essence. Gong Sun Cha's expression was shy, and ignorant of the fact his eyes had turned bright red. He was very excited. Jindan. In the battle at Golden Crow City against Clear Sky Old Forefather, the Vermilion Bird camp that he was in command of didn't have any use at all. To Gong Sun Cha, who looked shy on the surface, but was proud inside, it was a great humiliation. Facing a Jindan straight on this time, how could he not be excited? The moment the large net took form, his eyes suddenly narrowed and flashed with the light of the hunter closing the next. He quickly spat out 2 words. Second Division. Elder Mei charged headfirst into this enormous net. While these sword essence could not form tangible danger to her, they still put her in her Asari state. She had been somewhat careless and did not activate her Ling armor. When she found where she stood was filled with sword energies, she finally activated the Ling shield. Pia pia pia. 3 sword energies struck her Ling shield. The shield only shook slightly, but her expression was very terrible. She felt she had lost face. Anger exploding, she screamed piercingly, and a plum branch appeared in her hand. This glistening plum was about 3 chi in length. It was old and flexible. The flowers on the branches were in full bloom. Elder Mei waved it slightly. The tender petals left the plum tree and flew with the wind. In a moment, the plum flowers rained down and managed to cover all of Sky Peak Platoon. It was a dreamy realm of flowers, but a sharp sound howled. Like the tide, the beautiful flower petals became shrap. Every petal contained sharp sword essence. The dream realm instantly became hell. It was Elder Mei's killing move, Plum Sacrifice. Elder Zhao's eyes flashed as she laughed prettily. Mei Jiejie really is going overboard. What reason is there to use a killing move just as the fight is starting? We can't even get a drink of soup. Elder Wang praised. Elder Mei's sword essence has become purer. This Plum Sacrifice is multiple times stronger than last time. Su Yu was entranced. As Elder Mei attacked, the other side instantly disappeared in this beautiful yet treacherous flower sea. The people of Sky Peak Platoon knew the danger. Their expressions changing, everyone retreated. Flee? Not so simple. Elder Mei felt unspeakably good as she said hatefully. The spell on her hands changed again. Her mind suddenly stuttered, a feeling of danger rising. She instantly was shocked. At this time, the air around her suddenly shook lightly, the sky full of flowers imperceptibly paused. At some unknown time, a troop had charged to within 30 zhang of her. Such fast speed. Her eyes shrank. The other came quickly like a shining blade that made her feel that she could not stand under its sharpness. Elder Mei was suddenly enraged. The other side was just a charge of more than 100 people, yet she actually had felt fear. It was too embarrassing. As she turned the plum tree in her palm, the sky full of falling flowers seemed to be carried by the wind to move towards the troop coming towards her. The sharp flower petals were like soul snatchers, and the wind pillar that carried them was undoubtedly a meat grinder. This fight is over, Elder Wang said lightly. Even if she was the one facing Elder Mei's move, she would not be able to escape without injury. Both Su Yu and Elder Xiao did not doubt her words. Yet what they never had thought was the other side did not retreat, but charged straight at Elder Mei. Wei Ran felt the battle intent in his body had reached a peak, and his speed had risen to a peak. In order to increase their speed to the maximum, Lil Miss had arranged a position near the back for them. Facing the meat-grinding pillar of wind, Wei Ran showed no fear. Every Xiozha of Vermilion Bird Camp believed that when their speed was at maximum, when they completed their charge, no enemy could stop them. This wasn't something that Lil Miss forced onto them, but a belief born from multiple battles. Wei Ran raised the flying sword in his hand. His fellows raised the flying sword in their hands at the same time. He suddenly glared angrily and shouted, "100 kill." The flying sword in his hand sliced forward with all his power. Everyone in 2nd Division shouted at the same time, "100 kill." The flying sword in their hands sliced forward with all their power. The sword energies were like streams meeting at the sea, 100 swords becoming one. A gigantic sword energy 3 zhang wide rang deeply as it flashed blindingly and collided with the pillar of wind. Chapter 312. Zuomo's Fury Boom. Everyone's vision flashed, the burning light stabbing people's eyes to the point they couldn't remain open. Elder May's sleeves were torn, her hair loose, and a thin stream of blood was coming out the corner of her mouth. She looked in terror at the group of more than 100 people in front of her. What sword scripture was this? She had seen sword scriptures that were combined in an attack together before, but she had never heard of sword scripture that combined attacks of more than 100 people, much less seen it with her eyes. Combined sword scripture attacks demanded high cooperation between the Xiozha. The more people there were, the less likely it was that it would succeed. A combined sword scripture attack of more than 100 people was something that could not be imagined. As a Jindan, she could only retreat when facing such a terrifying blow. Looking at the troop that was slightly disorganized in front of her, it was like she had seen a ghost. Wei Ran's body was empty of power. Not just him, but every one of his fellows were panting heavily. But every person's face was filled with battle intent and pride. Jindan, so what? Wei Ran was so excited he wanted to howl. To wound a Jindan with one blow. This was something they would never even dare to think about in the past, but it happened right in front of their eyes now. But he forcibly suppressed the excitement and battle tremors inside. He had not forgotten his duty. Scatter. Like a tide, the Xiozha of 2nd Division suddenly divided down the middle. Elder May was shocked and uncertain, but when her gaze landed on the passageway made by the opening, her expression changed dramatically. A light and deep vibrating sound was like the deep bark of an ancient beast. Another 100 people. A charge just like the previous one. Elder Wang and Elder Zhao's complexions changed. Elder May was in danger. The two did not dare to be careless. The mysterious master of Golden Crow City had subordinates of such power. Just a short exchange, but it was coordinated and flawless. From the beginning, Elder May had landed in the other's formation. The enormous sword energy net made by the 15 Xiozha that comprehended sword essence had only one goal. Slow down Elder May. A Jindan that lost their speed instantly became fragile when facing a strong troop that could complete a combined sword scripture attack of over 100 people. The two also found to their shock that the master of Golden Crow City didn't just have this one troop under his command. Also, the other didn't give Elder May any chance to breath. Their attacks were like waves, one wave after another. If this continued, Elder May would become a fish on the other's chopping block. The two understood the dangers of the situation. At this time, they couldn't attend to anything else, but leapt over. They only needed to create a chance for Elder May to breath, and the scales of battle would become balanced again. Kill. A cold and slightly old voice suddenly rang beside Elder Wang's ears. A feeling of danger floated onto her mind. She was very shocked, her figure disappearing from her spot. A black snake the thickness of a water barrel viciously swept across the position she had just been at. Elder Wang looked gravely at the troop that had ambushed her. A slave transporting boat's deck was filled with standing black armored Xiozha. Heavy armor Xiozha? Puzzlement floated into her mind. The clumsy heavy armor had long been eliminated by history. She felt it was incomprehensible that a heavy armor troop had appeared in front of her. However, she was not careless. The thick black snakes coiling above their heads made her sense danger. Darkness killing, sharpness. Her gaze landed on the young black-armored Xiozha at the very front. She could feel the battle intent in the other's eyes, and killing intent that was so thick it could not be resolved. Zuo Emo stopped Elder Xiao, Hee hee, handsome guy, why have you stopped me? Elder Xiao laughed prettily. The snowy and fine hand lightly covered the warm and red lips, and was unspeakably seductive. Zuo became super alert. His attitude might have been relaxed when he had been swearing back at Elder Mei, but when he truly faced a Jindan, he still felt slightly nervous. He didn't say anything, but stared tightly at the other. Different to earlier, any speech was useless. If you keep looking me, I will be embarrassed. Elder Zhao's eyes moved with allure. Zuo did not react, but he didn't understand. If it was something like swearing at each other, he could understand. But did the woman have some scheme to be talking like this? He became increasingly wary. He didn't waste words, one hand pulling and the other drawing. Two young fiendish hard lightning bolts left his hands. You are so harsh to attack me. If I get wounded, could you bear it? The sweet and seductive voice floated in the air. Elder Zhao's exceptional body flickered in and out of view in the air. The snowy and smooth skin, the high twin peaks, the eyes, they all unconsciously attracted all attention. Zuo was puzzled. Could bear it? Why couldn't he bear it? The hard lightning on his hands continued to bomb towards the other like rain. With a pretty bell-like laugh left behind in the air, Elder Zhao's figure was flickering in the air. The air seemed to have a new addition of a sweetly fragrant and tempting smell. Zuo had a headache. The other's movement method was very powerful. He couldn't even touch the other's clothing. The sweetness in the air entered Zuo's nose. He suddenly felt strangely heated and frantic. The speed of the hard lightning increased, but no matter how fast they were, no hard lightning could even brush the other. As he thought, Zuo's body suddenly froze as though he was hit with a bolt of lightning. In an instant, his face was a mix of green and red. He was furious, swearing as he pointed at the females. Illusory formations. You group of illusory formations. He finally remembered where he had seen this before. Wukong Mountain, the pink paper crane. That damned pink paper crane had once used a similar move against him, but he had seen through it then. An illusory formation that was almost the exact same. The anger inside erupted. In the past, the paper crane female had did that to Ji. Ji couldn't defeat her. Ji endured it. You dare to use this move to trick Ji? Go won't tolerate it. The new grievance and the old hate mixed together. Especially when Zuo recalled his sorry state in the past. The anger in his heart burned even brighter. Gu hates illusory formations the most. Zuo gritted his teeth and brimmed with killing intent. Pia pia pia. The naked beauties in front of him suddenly turned into balls of smoke. Before he could react, everything around him exploded into smoke. Inside the thick smoke was Zuo's tragic wail. Jingshi. My Jingshi. The scenery around him changed, and Zuo seemed to wake from a dream. He was still in the air, empty air. Zuo's eyes instantly turned red. He felt his heart was dripping blood. Jingshi, so much Jingshi all gone. He who had felt so rich just now felt great sorrow rise in his heart and stimulate him. If it was said that illusory formations made him remember his tragic previous days, and made him feel fury, then losing so much Jingshi suddenly could not simply be described by fury. Grievance. Deep hatred. Hatred that one side could not survive. Blood seeped out of Elder Zhao's mouth. Sky flower fall. Was invisible as it corroded the mind and was wondrous in its powerful. But if it was broken, her mind would be heavily wounded. Even more importantly, she still did not understand how the master of Golden Crow City had recognized and broken Skyflower Fall. The Skyflower Fall, that had never failed before, was defeated at the hands of a Ningmai youth. She still could not believe it now. This wasn't possible. Zuo did not care for the shock and puzzlement the other felt. His eyes were filled with blood and his shout like thunder. Give all the Jingshi back to me. The first transformation of the Great Day Mo physique suddenly materialized. Chapter 313. Serpent transformation. A blurry golden shadow appeared behind Zuo's back. The shadow had a very indistinct shape. It was like an enormous golden cloud that moved behind Zuo's body. What was that? Elder Xiao was filled with uncertainty, and she felt the youth in front of her was filled with strangeness. Skyflower Fall. was based on appearances and was completely the opposite of normal illusory formations. Normal illusory formations used external forces to shake the mind of Xiuzha, while Sky Flower Fall woke the innate desires of the Xiuzha. A Dhyana Xiu's samadhi gave them strong minds, and the possibility of them being enchanted was much lower than other Xiuzha. But benefits always came with disadvantages. Dhyana Xiu had strong minds, but their convictions also had to be strong as well. Spells like Sky Flower Fall exploited this and were amazingly effective against them. Only when the Dhyana Xiu could cultivate to the higher stage of great freedom and let go of their convictions would spells like Sky Flower Fall lose their effect. But the stage of great freedom was a very profound level. The Dhyana Xiu which reached such a level would all be great powers, and wouldn't appear in a little place like Sky Water Jia, much less a Ningmai 20-something-year-old youth reaching such a level. This Sky Flower Fall, that had never failed before, had been ineffective. Under the backlash of the illusion, her mind was injured. Up until now, she still did not know how Zuomo had seen through it, and what that return all the Jingshi to me meant. Also, this indistinct cloud was eerie and mysterious. A strong feeling of danger made her heart beat rapidly. Her knowledge naturally wasn't ordinary for her to have cultivated to Jindan, but she had never heard of such a strange and weird golden shadow before. The golden shadow moved as though it was alive. In the blink of an eye, it collapsed towards its center and rapidly shrank. A pair of half-transparent golden wings appeared on Zuomo's back. Great Day Mo Physique, first transformation, light void wings. The guard camp that Xu Long was leading was engaged in heavy combat with Elder Wang at this time. Elder Wang learned from Elder Mei's example, and continuously changed her position to maintain the initiative. However, Xu Long wasn't dumb and did not attack first. He securely held his position to cut off any opportunity for Elder Wang to give aid to Elder Mei. The Crow Fiend Mo Kill formation was in motion. After breaking through last time, the little Mo Kill could be used with ease. Threads of black energy turned to thick chains that formed an enormous net to block the path of Elder Wang. This way, no one could gain an advantage over the other. 100 kill. The shouts of 100 people shook like thunder. A gigantic sword and the flower petal wind collided. Elder Mei suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. 2 branches on the plum branch in her hand snapped. The tree was filled with cracks and only had 5 branches left. The Ling power of Elder Mei was almost running out of her control and boiled like water. The other side did not give her any chance to recover. The deep sound sounded at her ears like a nightmare again. Elder Wang's expression was heavy. The warmth it usually held had disappeared, and was replaced by killing intent. She knew that she could not keep tangling with this group of people. Elder Mei had reached the end of her strength, and did not have the power to even continue for 15 minutes. A thread of regret came into her heart. The power of the Master of Golden Crow City was much stronger than they had imagined. Before today, they had never thought there would be a day where they would be left so disheveled and sorry-looking due to a group of Ningmai. It was just a group of Ningmai. No matter how high their numbers, they never even considered Ningmai as a serious threat. From the moment they became Jindan, they had the qualifications to look down at Ningmai. This conviction was shattered by the cruel reality of today. At this moment, she did not hope for victory, but only hoped that the 3 of them could survive. As long as the 3 of them could survive, the 100 Flower Alliance would continue to exist. If the 3 of them were no longer here, even if the Master of Golden Crow City did not deal the final blow, the other powers of Bright Water City would swallow 100 Flower Alliance. Xu Long looked coldly at the other. He knew the other was going to go all out. He did not feel any fear, even though the other was a Jindan. They were the cause of this battle. They had more reason than any other person to put their lives on the line. Xiu slavery had existed for a long time, and was common in every jia. Xu Long knew this reality. He was not so delusional as to hope that Darren could save all the Xiu slaves and change the situation. That was not realistic. Darren had not blamed them, and even took everyone to attack 100 Flower Alliance. Xu Long decided to put his life on the line. It wasn't just for a one, but more for themselves and himself. He didn't feel any fear at the other's decision to go all out, but felt slightly excited. Elder Wang took out a begonia palace lantern. A blue-white flame lightly jumped inside the lantern. As the begonia palace lantern was taken out, the air around it paused for a short moment. After a while, an even more strange scene occurred. The air around Elder Wang started to jump in rhythm with the pulsing of the blue-white flame. Elder Wang's figure started to blur in the air. Shulong's pupils imperceptibly shrank. This begonia palace lantern was a powerful talisman. He raised his right hand covered in black armor. His right hand was completely enveloped in a ball of thick black energy. As the wind blew past, the black energy flickered like a wisp of flame. The people of guard camp silently raised their right hands. A ball of thick black energy encased everyone's right hand. The black snakes that coiled above their heads suddenly shattered and turned to tiny threads of black energy. These black energies gathered together with astounding speed and formed a black snake 100 zhang long. The body of this black snake was completely tangible, with all of its muscles and scales intact as though it was alive. The red snake pupils did not hold emotions. It opened its maw and bared its white fangs as it breathed in. The black fire in the sky and the black energies that encased Shulong and the others' right hands were sucked into the sky and into the black snake's mouth. Ooh! The deep long wail was like an invisible wind that swept in all directions. Having absorbed the black fire, the black snake quickly transformed. 2 bumps formed on its forehead. The snake's pupils became even sharper, the scales even blacker and shinier, and the presence even more astonishing. Elder Wang was even more shocked. This black armor troop had very strange battle methods, and was completely different from any type of xiuzha she had seen before. But she recognized the change in the black snake, serpent transformation. Snakes and serpents had an innate difference, and that was also true of their strength. This black snake that had not finished its transformation into a serpent still exuded a completely superior strength than just a moment ago. Its pupils seemed able to drain away all warmth. Elder Wang's heart tightened. Waves of warmth came from the begonia palace lantern. Her heart eased slightly. Yes, the black snake was astonishing, but the begonia palace lantern in her hand was not ordinary. She was skilled in forging and especially skilled in making all kinds of flower lanterns. This hexagonal begonia palace lantern was her masterpiece. The begonias used in the lantern were 6th-grade sky heart begonias, one of the best types of begonias in the world. The rarest was the blue-white flame inside the palace lantern. It came from the center of a 10,000-year blue fire bamboo. It was called Blue Heart Bamboo Flame, and was a rare specimen among 4th-grade fires. Without another word, she raised the begonia palace lantern in her hand and chanted in a low voice. The petals of the begonia palace lantern fell off and flew into the sky. It seemed that there was an endless amount of flower petals, yet the lantern did not change at all. The begonia flower petals danced in the sky. In the blink of an eye, the sky was full of flower petals like a dream. Compared to the plum blossoms of Elder May, the number of begonia flower petals were even more amazing. There seemed to be no end. All of 100 Flower Valley was covered within it. The black snake ignored the rain of flower petals. The black body coiled as its red pupils coldly stared at Elder Wang. The flame of the begonia palace lantern suddenly jumped. Boom! The flower petals in the sky simultaneously started to burn. Countless blue-white flames danced in the sky. Blue heart bamboo flame. B. A bloom of blue heart bamboo flame landed on the shiny body of the black snake, bounced twice, and was extinguished. The black snake did not seem to detect it. Elder Wang's expression changed. The blue heart bamboo flame was actually ineffective. The blue heart bamboo flame, which could burn through everything, could not even leave a mark on the body of the black snake. The icy eyes of the black snake had no emotion. It was made from pure and sharp killing essence. Was it something a measly blue heart bamboo flame could damage? Light flashed through Shulong's eyes. He shouted in a low tone, "Kill!" The pupils of the black snake suddenly opened, its enormous body twisting and jumping to charge at Elder Wang. Elder Wang was shocked and hurriedly spun the begonia palace lantern in her hand. Countless blooms of blue heart bamboo flame blew towards the black snake. Pia pia pia. The sounds were like the popping of beans. Each of the blue heart bamboo flames were the size of a thumb, but its was unexpectedly strong. The enormous body of the black snake was forced to bend down. Elder Wang released a breath. It was good as long as there was a way to stop the other. She channeled her Ling power furiously, and countless flower petals flew into the air. However, the flower petals this time were not tender and weak like they were with the last attack. They were like the sharpest blades with a keen sword essence as they swam around the body of the black snake. Pew pew pew. Scratches appeared on the black snake's shiny body. The black snake felt pain and furiously twisted its body. Yet the blue heart bamboo flame was endless as it bombed the black snake with no signs of ending. A fine layer of sweat appeared on Shulong's head. His expression was calm, but he was unusually furious. A moment of carelessness, and the other had taken the advantage. How could he tolerate being suppressed? So what if the talisman was powerful? A cold energy flashed through his eyes. Little Mo kill. The black snake suddenly collapsed and turned to a ball of black energy. The center of the black energy spun rapidly. The blue heart bamboo flame and the begonia sword essence covering the sky seemed to be attracted by an invisible force, and uncontrollably flew towards the spinning black energy. Elder Wang's expression changed dramatically. The suction of the spinning black energy was shocking. The blue heart bamboo flame and the begonia sword essence furiously flew towards the black energy whirlpool. What terrified her was that this black energy whirlpool was like a monster that could consume everything. It had not changed at all after so much blue heart bamboo flame and begonia sword essences had flown in. The situation was becoming increasingly worse. A sharp look came into her eyes. She snorted coldly. For the first time, the begonia palace lantern left her hand and flew into the sky. Chapter 314, Successive Mo kill 4th grade talismans, and above generally had formation techniques that accompanied them, and as the grade increased, the number of formation techniques a talisman possessed would also increase. For example, the majority of 4th grade talismans had only one formation technique. Only the finest of 4th grade talismans would have 2 formation techniques. 5th grade talismans would have between 2 to 4 formation techniques, and 6th grade talismans would have between 4 to 6 formation techniques. The formation techniques could utilize the talisman's power to its maximum potential. Each additional formation technique was one more killing move. No one would scorn having more killing moves. At this time, Elder Wang understood that normal attacks would be ineffective against the people in front of her. How long has it been since she used a killing move? Elder Wang's thoughts wandered. After she had cultivated to Jindan, she concentrated on her study of forging, and never fought again. She had never expected the first battle for her as a Jindan would result in her being pushed to such a dangerous position. Gathering her thoughts, the begonia palace lantern in the sky slowly revolved. Each flower petal flashed with a glowing light. The pulsing blue heart bamboo flame was like a heart, and stirred the Ling energy in the surrounding area to pulse with it. Zhuomo's consciousness was the largest, and he was the first to detect the abnormality. He couldn't help but feel shocked. This begonia palace lantern was definitely not below the 6th grade. The power of a 6th grade talisman in the hands of a Jindan would be terrifying. Elder Xiao also detected it. She was very stunned. Elder Wang was going all out. For some reason, when she knew that Elder Wang was going all out, she didn't feel any excitement but felt fear instead. The pressure that the youth with the half-transparent golden wings gave her seemed to increase in that moment. Zhuo sensitively detected that Elder Zhao's attention wavered. An opportunity. Light flashed through his eyes and his body disappeared. Elder Zhao's heart suddenly jumped, the pink flying sword in her hand rising. Multiple sword energy shields appeared in the space beside her. Before she saw the results, she retreated, but the feeling of danger suddenly rose. Out of shock, her flying sword sliced towards her back. Ping! An enormous force drove into her from the flying sword. Her entire right arm went numb, and her flying sword was ripped from her hand. She bit down on her lips. Not daring to stop at all, her figure successively flashed. A cold essence flashed behind her back, and carried a spray of blood with it. She panted heavily, and looked with astonishment at the youth in the distance. The back of her right hand was bleeding, and there was a curved wound on her back. She had been wounded twice by a Ningmai's attack. She looked at Mo as though she was looking at a monster. Her gaze landed on the half-transparent golden wings on Mo's back and furiously trying to determine what kind of abhina it was. What Diana Shio cultivated was abhina, and in her view, the wings should be a kind of abhina. With such a wondrous abhina, this youth's origins were not ordinary. They really encountered a great foe today. Mo felt his entire body filled with great strength that was so abundant he wanted to groan. The great day Mo physique really lived up to the rumors. At this time, Mo finally experienced that only the transformations of a Mo physique could truly express the true power of the Mo physique. The light void wings on his back seemed to be rooted inside his body. There were no actual changes inside his body, but many of his muscles, blood, and bones seemed to wake from their slumber. The abundant power did not come from the light void wings, but from the depths of his body. Powerful. The power that shook inside his body and almost forced his body to explode. In this moment, Mo comprehended some of the true meaning of Mo physique cultivation. The body was like a treasure cave, one that was unfathomable in its depths. But in the great majority of time, this treasure cave was dormant. The Mo physique was like a vessel that continuously matured and developed to become increasingly more powerful, and so the power that was activated and released was greater. Looking at Elder Xiao, who was just barely hanging on, Mo was suddenly filled with confidence that came from great strength. Facing a Jindan, he was not helpless anymore. Glancing at the Begonia Palace lantern igniting in the sky, he decided to end the battle as quickly as possible. The light void wings on his back lightly flapped. A strong force passed over, and his body disappeared in the air again. In the sky, the Begonia Palace lantern started to burn into a ball of blue-white fire, and pulsed in a unique beat. Elder Wang chanted lowly, "Blue Heart Begonia Sea." Boom. The empty sky seemed like dry tinder suddenly caught fire. In an instant, the flame spread and the sky above Elder Wang turned to a sea of fire. The blue-white sea of flames covered the sky. Xu Long raised his face upwards. The sunlight was blocked by the sea of fire, and a large shadow landed on his face. Looking at the vast sea of flame, one couldn't help but feel awe. The blue-white sea of fire furiously burned as it spread. Countless threads of blue-white fire fell from the sky, like tens of thousands of blue-white hands of fire that shot at the 5 slave transporting boats. The faces of people on the boats, like the forging division, all changed. The furious sea of fire above their head covered everything and felt unavoidable. Only Xu Long and his fellows stood motionless and steady as rocks. But the battle intent in their hearts was stirred by the sky full of fire. The black energy around them became denser. The roiling black energy above their heads formed a snake again. The enormous snake was not lacking compared to the sea of flame. At the same time, Xu Long raised his left hand, the left hand that was covered in black energy. Every person in guard camp raised their left hand, that was covered in black energy. The black snake opened its large mouth and sucked with a hiss. The black energy was like fire, and its sparks left their hands and raced into the sky. The blue-white flame came from the sky, just like the fire-like black energy rising up against the flow. Between these white and black flames was a colossal black snake. The scene was filled with power. It was like an invisible hand tightly gripped everyone's hearts. The people on the slave transporting boats dazedly raised their heads in silence. In this moment, they forgot their terror. The dots of black fire in the sky rapidly landed in the mouth of the black snake. The maw of the black snake was like a bottomless pit, and cleanly absorbed every bit of black energy that rose into the sky. The black energy around Xu Long and the others was now much fainter. The sheen on their black armor was much dimmer. The black snake's cold pupils showed slight pain. The 2 bumps on its forehead bulged like something inside was moving and wanted to burst out. A light suddenly exploded out of the black snake's pupils as it shrieked. Ooha! The lines of fire landing from the sky suddenly paused and could not progress any further. There seemed to be an invisible wall between the black snake and the white sea of fire that forcibly stopped the tens of thousands of threads of blue-white fire. Elder Wang's expression changed. She did not notice that she had bitten through her lips and blood was dripping. She had been pushed into a hopeless situation. Even her retreat had been unknowingly sealed shut. If she chose to retreat now, the sea of flames in the sky would explode, and it would be difficult to escape death. Pia, the hairpin in her hair broke. Her long hair fell down, and was blown by the wind in a tangle like demons dancing. She did not hesitate. Her last thread of Ling power was thrown crazily into the sea of fire. Fire-born begonia. The sea of fire changed again. Blue begonias grew out of the sea of fire, bloomed, and withered. The withered flower petals landed in the sea of fire and turned to dust. The sea of fire suddenly collapsed and concentrated towards its center. All of the Ling energy in the entire 100-flower valley was pulled in. The Ling flowers that were planted throughout the valley felt this enormous pulling force and left their branches to gravitate to the sea of fire. Suyu saw this and her heart bled. These Ling flowers were the most important source of Jingshi for 100-flower alliance. They were all destroyed today. It wouldn't be possible to recover without 20 years of work. After this battle, no matter if they obtained victory or were defeated, 100-flower alliance's power would plummet, and it was likely they wouldn't even be able to hold on to 100-flower valley. Should we go help guard camp? A threat of terror flashed across Zhong Ru's eyes. Even he, who had very good composure, felt his heart beat wildly at the sea of fire in the sky. Gong Sun Cha smiled. Don't worry. Xu Long and the others aren't weak. Even though Shi Xiang had never told him who was in charge of guard camp, he knew. When would it ever be his turn to worry about the mysterious person that could annihilate him in war chess? Even he was curious just how strong the guard camp was. Gong Sun Cha suppressed his curiosity, and his eyes returned to the battlefield he was responsible for. Looking at Vermilion Bird Camp charge the other side in waves, a furious battle intent came into his eyes. Even if it was that mysterious person that could exterminate him in war chess, he wouldn't willingly admit defeat. Their fight had moved from war chess into reality. Was there anything that could excite him more? It may have been the excitement that caused 2 patches of red to float on his face. This made him look even more shy and bashful. Close the net. The sea of fire was changing, and the black snake in the sky had also reached the most crucial time of its transformation. The 2 bumps on its forehead continuously grew like 2 enormous blisters. Wooha! The black snake gave a painful shriek again. The mountain-like body furiously twisted. Everywhere it swept, it created soul-shaking vibrations. Pew! The skin above the bumps on its forehead finally broke. 2 black horns that seemed like dry wood burst out. The 2 black horns continued to grow until they were about 2 chi when they finally stopped. Serpent transformation. This black snake finally completed its most important transformation. Today onwards, it would be called the Black Serpent. A terrifying presence swept across the sky like a hard wind. Everyone, including those on Zhuomo's side and the 100-flower alliance's side, froze in their movements. The only person that was not affected was Zhuomo. The light void wings on his back shook and resolved this shocking presence. But Zhuomo was also shocked by the powerful presence of the Black Serpent. The 20-zhang long serpent body swam with ease in the air. The pair of pupils were not icy like they were in the past, but were dignified and proud, as well as immeasurably deep. It raised its serpent head. The sea of fire in the air turned to an enormous fire begonia. The begonia faced the Black Serpent and slowly turned. A hint of mirth came onto Xu Long's face. The black energy on his body was much fainter, and caused his slightly smile to look slightly fragile. The other camp guards were pale, but their faces were overjoyed. They had successfully cultivated to the second stage of the Crow Fiend Mo Kill formation. The second kill of the Crow Fiend Mo Kill formation, successive Mo Kill. Chapter 315 Flower Slaves The Last Gamble. Even the slowest person could clearly feel that the moment that determined life and death had arrived. The Black Serpent suddenly turned into a ball of thick and vicious black energy, and then it shot towards the fire begonia that was diving towards it from the sky. A cold light flashed through Zhuomo's eyes. The light void wings shook slightly, and his figure disappeared in the air. The 7th, 9th and 10th divisions of Vermilion Bird Camp attacked at the same time like 3 blades flashing across the sky. With the presence of death, they viciously sliced at Elder May. Boom. Everyone felt their vision darken. The earth shake like the world was ending. And then the sky filled with a blinding light illuminated the sky, formed from countless streams of fire shooting in all directions before disappearing. All of Brightwater City was alarmed by such a terrifying collision. Countless Xiozha flew into the sky and looked with terror in the direction of Hundred Flower Valley. The powers that had been preparing to come to the aid of Hundred Flower Valley saw this. They were shocked and stopped their movements. This was a collision on the level of Jindan. Compared to the earth-shaking Black Serpent, Zuomo's attack was silent without even a whisper. Like a ghost, he appeared behind Elder Xiao. The glass-like right palm lightly pressed on Elder Xiao's glowingly alluring back. His action was warm, gentle, and without any presence. When Zhongru saw Zuomo's move from a distance, his expression changed slightly. He felt awe that boss could cultivate Sky Glass Wave to such a fantastical level. Elder Xiao's figure suddenly froze. She seemed to hear an authoritative low growl echoing throughout her body. The explosive power erupted like a volcano, and the channels inside her body were instantly shredded. What made her feel as though she was going to die was the golden core inside her body had stopped revolving. No matter how she tried, the golden core did not move even a sliver. A hand suddenly grasped the golden core. Endless blackness swallowed her like a tide. Everyone in the 7th, 9th and 10th divisions raised their flying swords together. Everyone's blood was boiling in their bodies. Their battle intent filled their bodies and almost causing them to combust. They furiously accelerated without keeping anything back. Accelerate. Continuous acceleration. There was only one goal in everyone's eyes. The leaders of the 3 divisions shouted at the same time, 100 kill. 100 kill. The Xiozha of the 3 divisions howled angrily, their flying swords slicing down. The 3 sword energies that flashed past at high speed gave off a blinding light in the air, as their killing intent locked onto Elder Mei. Elder Mei's hair was loose as she glared, blood seeping out of the corner of her mouth. Facing the 3 enormous sword energies, she had a slight smile. Wave after wave of attacks had pushed her nerves on edge. She had long been at the end of her rope, and just hanging on by a breath. The plum tree in her hand had broken into pieces long ago, just leaving behind the bare main trunk. The 3 enormous sword energies headed straight at her face. The presence sharp sword essence was enough to freeze her blood. Was she going to be finally released? This was the last thought that flashed through her mind. The 3 enormous sword energies exploded at the same time. The blinding light consumed her. The Begonia Palace lantern was destroyed. Elder Wang was heavily injured and spat out 3 mouthfuls of blood. The black serpent swam and coiled in the air, and growled successively. One of the black horns that had just grown had been broken. It clearly was very furious about that. The black serpent had a vicious look in its eyes. It suddenly turned to a ball of black energy and smashed towards Elder Wang. It came extremely quickly. Elder Wang's movement was affected by her injuries, and she was struck full-on by the black energy. Bam! Like a meteor, Elder Wang was thrown into the ground. The pitiful Elder Wang wasn't a body-cultivating expert like Zuomo. Such a strong crash was a fatal blow to her weak body. She was instantly killed. Su Yu's face was pale white, her eyes filled with hopelessness. The death of 3 Jindan elders was a loss that Hundred Flower Alliance could not bear. There was still a troop brimming with murderous intent in the sky. A thought suddenly flashed through her mind. Was today the day that Hundred Flower Alliance would cease to exist? The light void wings on Zuomo's back slowly faded. The rich and explosive power inside his body quickly disappeared like a retreating tide. He looked at the other people. No matter if it was Vermilion Bird Camp or Guard Camp, everyone was furiously panting for breath. It was possible to see how fierce these battles had been. But all of them had smiles on their faces. Only they, especially because they had experienced the battle with Clear Sky Old Forefather in Little Mountain Jia, could feel the difficulty of this battle, could feel the improvement of their strength. This battle had disturbed all of Brightwater City. Countless Xiozha flew from Brightwater City towards Hundred Flower Valley. Zuomo glanced at the battlefield and grabbed Suyu. Suyu seemed to have lost her soul. She did not resist Zuomo capturing her. Zuomo was slightly reassured and said to Shulong, "You guys go search and see if there is any more people you are familiar with." We'll take all that you recognize. Shulong was moved. Without another word, he nodded and left with guard camp. Zuo held Suyu and led the group to start looting 100 Flower Alliance. Suyu's last thread of hope was destroyed and she was abnormally obedient. Zuo felt great shock at the wealth of 100 Flower Alliance. It definitely was one of the richest sects he had ever seen. Lingying sect, which had been famed for its wealth in Sky Moon Jia, but it was very poor in comparison to 100 Flower Alliance. Suyu was skilled in management. After 20 years of accumulation, the wealth of this enormous sect caused Zuo to sink into an extreme frenzy. In the storeroom, 3rd grade and 4th grade materials were piled up in mountains. 5th grade materials were not rare. Zuo even saw a large number of 6th grade materials. His drool almost spilled out. There were all kinds of ling flowers, including the seeds of rare ling flowers. To a person like Zuo who would even pluck the feathers off a goose, how could he pass on such a good opportunity? Everyone in the forging division were sent over to transport the materials to the slave transporting ships. Zuo decided to loot all of 100 Flower Valley. The treasure rooms of the elders gave Zuo joyful surprises again, especially Elder Wang's room, which held many of her craftwork. The great majority of these were 5th grade talismans and above. Most of those were various kinds of flower lanterns. Even though there were not many items in the treasure rooms, but all of them were of very good quality, Zuo did not hesitate in sweeping them all into his ring. The jade scrolls, including the jade scrolls the elders collected, and the ones that 100 Flower Alliance had bought or obtained through other channels, were also swept clean by Zuo. Looking at the disciples that fled in fear, Zuo was filled with scorn. After he finished looting, 100 Flower Alliance would truly be dead. If this was a cohesive sect, all the disciples would have started to attack at this time, and not just watch as the elders risked their lives. This had to be said to be the tragedy of 100 Flower Alliance. Shulong found Zuo. His expression was grave, and his eyes pained and sorrowful. "Boss, come look." Zuo stilled, and followed Shulong into an extremely deep cave in the mountain valley. When he saw the terrifying scene, his skin uncontrollably prickled. Hundreds of Xiao slaves had all kinds of strange ling flowers tangled on their bodies. The roots of these ling flowers were rooted in their bodies. Their gazes were unfocused, strange smiles on their faces. The ling flowers on their bodies were alluring as they were blooming. However, Zuo, who possessed ling eyes, could clearly see the vitality of these Xiao slaves were slowly being lost. It seemed as though something suddenly exploded inside Zuo's body. An unprecedented anger swept his body like it was burning. He suddenly gripped Suyu's throat and jerked her in front. Suyu's face was twisted as her eyes showed pain. Zuo's viciousness and brutality made her feel terror. "You group of scum." Zuo squeezed the words one by one through his teeth. His hand tightened and crushed Suyu's throat. Suyu's gaze became muddled. Even until death, she could not understand how Zuo could bear to act against her. Countless people showed goodwill towards her, and used all kinds of methods to curry her favor. She had always assumed no man would willingly kill her because of her unparalleled appearance. As long as she was docile and obedient, they wouldn't bear to. Zuo distastefully threw Suyu to the ground. "Boss, what to do with them?" Shulong could not disguise the sorrow in his voice. As someone who had also been a Xiao slave, he felt it even more deeply. He could detect the vitality of these Xiao slaves were slipping away bit by bit into the ling flowers on their bodies. In Zuo's mind, Puyao suddenly said to him, "Don't remove those ling flowers. If you move them even one bit, they will immediately die." Puyao's voice contained a rare threat of anger. "Flower slaves, I hadn't thought this method would have been passed down. Ling flowers grown on the bodies of flower slaves will take the flower slaves' purest vitality. The ling flowers grown this way will be extremely high in quality. If you want to save them, there is only one method." Zuo finally understood why 100 Flower Alliance had so many high-grade ling flowers. The rage rampaged in his chest. He forcibly suppressed it, and asked in a deep voice, "What method?" "The primary energies of the flower slaves is being taken away, and they cannot escape death. There are only two ways to save them. The first is to replenish their energies using Lingdan and such. The other method is to use reverse absorption. Reverse absorption. And yes, the Ling powers can absorb the primary energies and vitality of the flower slaves, so why can't the flower slaves absorb the primary energies and vitality of the Ling flowers? Zuomo's eyes lit up. How do you reverse it? Pu Yao threw a ball of light to Zuomo. I'll give you this flower Yao coexistence art. Pu Yao's voice was slightly heavy and carried an imperceptible sorrow. In the past, during the war between Xiuzha and Yaoma, many Yaoma were like them. After they were captured, they were implanted with Ling flowers. They would die after a length of time after they were rescued. In order to save them, this flower Yao coexistence art was created. I hadn't thought that this Yao art would be used again after thousands after years. Zuomo bit his lips and turned to say to Shulong, take them all onto the boat. A hint of joy flashed through Shulong's eyes. Boss definitely had a solution. He and guard camp hurriedly transported the hundreds of flower slaves to the slave-transporting boats. Zuomo's mood was extremely bad. He felt there was a fire burning in his heart that could not be vented. He never thought of himself as an ally of justice. However, the treatment of the flower slaves had broken through his bottom line. He could not suppress his fury. Suddenly, he raised his head to glance at the sky and the several troops rolling in. Zuomo suddenly smirked coldly. Chapter 316. Enormous change. 3 powers had come, with between 2,000 to 3,000 people. They looked with shock at the devastated 100-Flower Valley. They had clearly seen the great battle of the Jindan just now, and at a closer distance, they could feel the ferocity of the battle even more clearly. 100-Flower Valley was in ruins. The mountain valley that had been prosperous and filled with flowers had disappeared. The people that came looked at Zuomo's group with eyes that held shock and fear. It had been these 3,000 people that had erased a sect that ranked in the top 10 of Skywater Jia. Truthfully, they didn't want to be the ones to test the waters, but Sir is really too arrogant in our bright water city. One of the leaders of the group said coldly, then continued. You destroyed 100 Flower Alliance with just a few actions. Great moves, great attitude. We do not want to meddle in the grievance you have with 100 Flower Alliance. Combat is common, but it is too cruel of you to destroy 100 Flower Alliance. The one that spoke was the leader of one of the other groups, and he looked slightly old. If you're wise, give us Suyu, and we will spare your lives. This person's face was cold and indifferent, his murderous intent barely hidden. The 3 all had calm expressions. They predicted that Zuomo's group did not have the energy to fight after experiencing such a battle. Their intentions of taking advantage of the situation was evident. Zuomo glanced at Shulong and the others. He found that they could not disguise the exhaustion on their faces. The great battle just now had expended everyone's energy. However, they were still quick in reorganizing themselves. No one was panicked or terrified. There was only calm on each person's face. Seeing that their words did not cause Zuomo and his fellows to panic, the faces of the 3 people that spoke couldn't help but darken. The strength of mind of the master of Golden Crow City's subordinates was greater than they had imagined. In their predictions, if they just slightly pressured the master of Golden Crow City, he would capitulate. They did not want the situation to devolve into a standoff. Just as the 3 were preparing to increase their pressure on Zuomo, Zuomo calmly spoke. Suyu? I killed her. Simultaneous inhales of shock rang out in the surroundings. There were hundreds of people that had come to watch other than the 3 factions. They all were Xiuzha that had been disturbed by the battle, and came to watch. Everyone knew Suyu of Bright Water City. Many people's expressions became unnatural at the fact that such a strong local power had been easily destroyed by the mysterious power of unknown origins. What no one noticed was that some Xiuzha exchanged looks among themselves and quietly left the crowd. There were only 20 or so Xiuzha that left, hence they went unnoticed. But it was possible to see with the naked eye that many Xiuzha were quickly flying towards this place from Brightwater City. The city master is in danger. One of the Xiuzha that retreated said with a worried expression. These people clearly want to take advantage. They are really pulling a just excuse. Another person said furiously. We can't watch as City Master lands in danger. This person seemed to have some status in this group of people. He said in a deep voice. Everyone cannot forget the favor City Master did for all of us, giving us the chance to leave Little Mountain Jia, to see the light again. But there are just so few of us. With just us is definitely not enough. However, there's a lot of people that came from Little Mountain Jia in Bright Water City. The person said with a grave expression. Have you thought of how our days in Sky Water Jia will be in the future if City Master is treated like this today? Those of us that came from Little Mountain Jia, will all of us be bullied like this? Right. They even dare to target City Master. We definitely won't hold a place in their eyes. Big brother, what do you suggest we do? Let's go to Bright Water City to get reinforcements, the person said decisively. If we spread the news that City Master is in danger, no one from Little Mountain Jia will have any reason to stand aside and watch. The 20 or so people exchanged looks, nodded, and flew rapidly towards Bright Water City. You killed Suyu? The 3 people had dark faces. Zuomo's expression was calm as he silently grasped a sonic lightning walnut in his hand. These people looked very well organized, but there were no Jindan Xiuzha. Zuomo released a breath at this. If a Jindan had come, Zuomo would definitely take his people and run for their lives. Seeing the other was wary and had not immediately attacked, Zuomo was happy to drag on the conversation. The other definitely would not expect that the Xiuzha of Vermilion Bird Camp had formations carved on their bodies that could automatically take Ling power from the air and recover multiple times faster than normal Xiuzha. The recovery rate of Xu Long and his group was even faster. When they recovered, he wouldn't be afraid of these 3,000 people, or even twice that. So what? Do you have a relationship with her? Zuomo raised an eyebrow. Laughs rang out from the crowd. The 3 people's expressions were not attractive. All 3 of them had lusted after Suyu's beauty. Other than the temptation of great benefits, they had the notion of taking Suyu into their houses. Sect leader Su has a deep relationship with our sect. This one will definitely help get justice for sect leader Su, one of the people said hatefully. The other 2 did not speak, but their ranks pressed forward. The mood suddenly became tense. As the base of 100 Flower Alliance, 100 Flower Valley was not far from Bright Water City. The procession of 20 people quickly traveled to Bright Water City. They suddenly split up and flew low through the streets. Channeling their Ling power, they shouted with all their power. The master of Golden Crow City is being surrounded. Brothers of Little Mountain Jia, if you're a man, stand up. The shouts were like thunder as they rolled in waves. The people traveling in the sky looked over. The leader of the group suddenly swept across the ground, and his eyes lit up. There was an enormous sound tablet about 10 zhang high below that swirled with purple light. A sound tablet agency. He instantly landed and floated into the agency. Sir. A Xiuzha came up. Before the other finished speaking, he took out a pile of Jingshi and said in a deep voice, broadcast a message for me. As the others' ranks moved forward, Zuomo did not feel any pressure. The 3 troops could be called organized, but there was still a great distance from being an elite force. He was used to the great pressure from Vermilion Bird Camp and Guard Camp. Zuomo wouldn't feel anything from this kind of degree of pressure, but he noticed the Xiuzha in the surroundings seemed to stir as well, and his heart became wary. The individual power of the Xiuzha at the edges were average, and they were not organized, but in Zuomo's eyes, the threat of these people was much greater than the 3 factions at the front. With just a slight provocation, they would lose their rationality. They would charge up, and then the situation would descend into chaos. That had happened many times before in Little Mountain Jia. Zuomo, who had crawled his way out of Little Mountain Jia. How could he neglect this? Just you guys. Zuomo said coldly. His eyes narrowed coldly like blades, cold and freezing. For some unknown reason, all 3 people jumped in fright. They suddenly remembered this youth in front of them just killed a Jindan. Their pupils suddenly shrank to pinpoints, and their expressions changed as they stared at the 2 silver walnuts covered in golden patterns that spun on Zuomo's hand. Sonic lightning walnuts. An exclamation suddenly came from the crowd. Some that had knowledge unconsciously retreated 20 zhang. All the eyes gathered on the 2 sonic lightning walnuts in Zuomo's hands. Those were sonic lightning walnuts. The terrifying presence that emanated from the 2 sonic lightning walnuts made one's heart jump rapidly. Sonic lightning walnuts were rare 4th-grade materials. Who would be so wasteful to forge sonic lightning walnuts into one-use talismans? The eyes of many people became extremely heated, but no one dared to move a sliver. When sonic lightning walnuts were forged into one-time talismans, they were things that even Jindan were wary of. However, what reassured them slightly was that while the power of one-time sonic lightning walnut talismans was astounding, but they could only be used once. The 2 sonic lightning walnuts slowly floated forward from Zuomo's palm, and it was possible to see lightning arc across the surface of each walnut. Whoosh! The Xiuzha in front of Zuomo simultaneously moved to the sides. They didn't want to be at the front. Their eyes suddenly shrank again. Another 2 sonic lightning walnuts appeared in Zuomo's palm. The 2 sonic lightning walnuts floated up from his palm and floated in front of his chest. The 4 sonic lightning walnuts lined up in a row. Everyone's eyes tightly locked onto them and didn't dare to move away. Many people uncontrollably swallowed. If it was said that the 2 sonic lightning walnuts had previously made people feel fear, then 4 sonic lightning walnuts was like pouring a basin of cold water on their hearts that had been shaken. If 4 sonic lightning walnuts exploded at the same time, the Xiuzha that thought of this shook. When another 2 sonic lightning walnuts appeared in Zuomo's palm, the entire 100-flower valley was silent. 6 sonic lightning walnuts spun and twirled like 6 mischievous children restlessly in front of Zuomo. After a short period of utter silence, the Xiuzha that had thought they had some power did not hesitate this time, and simultaneously retreated 50 zhang. The space around Zuomo was instantly empty. Where did this guy come from? Everyone felt they were going crazy. One move, and it was 6 sonic lightning walnuts. This extravagance was enough to smash most of the tycoons in Brightwater City. When the number of sonic lightning walnuts in front of Zuomo increased to 8, the 3 leaders had ashen faces. The morale of their troops reached their lowest depth. If taking out 8 sonic lightning walnuts in one go could not be considered the mannerisms of a rich sect disciple, then the top 10 sects of Sky Water Jia were as poor as street urchins. When the number of sonic lightning walnuts in front of Zuomo reached a terrifying 10, everyone was left numb. If 10 sonic lightning walnuts exploded simultaneously, all of them, including the 100-flower valley, would only have one fate: to turn to ash. When the number of sonic lightning walnuts reached 20, the people were not nervous anymore, and they relaxed. Maniac! Why are they coming to a small place at Sky Water Jia to show off for? These young masters are really boring. All they know is to play dumb. Yes, they think we are stupid. Haha, those 3 factions are stunned now. They've offended a rich young master. Just wait to get killed. Did this guy want Suyu? Tried to force himself. Suyu wouldn't comply, so he killed Suyu in anger and destroyed 100-flower alliance. Suyu wouldn't comply. Another person rolled their eyes. Who knows who tried to force themselves onto the other person? The tense mood in the sky suddenly became filled with humor. The 3 leaders were dumbstruck where they stood. Chapter 317. Clouds gathering. Feishan was working idly and humming as he listened to the sound tablet. The people around him stared at him weirdly. It puzzled them how someone could appear relaxed and pleased when doing such a complex work. Only the Xiuzha that came from Little Mountain Jia could feel so at ease with such tasks. He suddenly stopped what he was doing and listened with concentration. Friends from Little Mountain Jia, the master of Golden Crow City is being entrapped in 100-flower valley in Brightwater City. Please come quickly to help. He listened very carefully. The sound tablet repeated it a few times. He stood up and then started to walk towards the door under the strange gazes of everyone else. Where are you going? The manager's expression was slightly ugly as he lectured sharply. Come back. You haven't finished what you are doing. Feishan bared his teeth in a smile, but his gaze was slightly murderous. The manager unconsciously shook, and he didn't dare to look at Feishan's gaze. The words that followed were swallowed back into his stomach. Feishan ignored him and left through the door. Walking on the streets, he instantly heard many people shouting loudly in the air. Brothers of Little Mountain Jia, City Master is trapped in 100 Flower Valley. Everyone go get them. The City Master is in danger. We shall. All of Brightwater City was disturbed. People continuously flew into the sky. Fei Shan raised his head. The sky of Brightwater City was filled with people. Seeing what was happening, he suddenly recalled the scene of everyone following the City Master as they charged out of Little Mountain Jia through the experience of the months. Something inside his body seemed to have been ignited. He did not hesitate to channel his Ling power, and flew into the sky and entered the flow of people. They dared to move against the City Master. The killing intent inside increased. Every Xiuzha around him had fury on their faces. This group of Xiuzha had all experienced the cruel calamity of Little Mountain Jia and survived. They were full of gratefulness and respect towards Zhuo Mo, who had led them out of Little Mountain Jia. The Master of Golden Crow City had led everyone out of the terrifying cage that was Little Mountain Jia. Now that City Master was in danger, how could they stand aside? A group of people were surrounding a sound tablet. Head, should we go? A mousy-looking person hurriedly asked his leader. The head glared. Of course we will go. They dare to even attack the City Master. Would they even leave us a way to live in the future? Kill them all. His subordinates instantly became excited and rumbled. Kill them. They want to make an example of the City Master. They should first look and see what they are made out of. The head's face was murderous. The Xiuzha that came out of Little Mountain Jia were much more sensitive to danger than normal Xiuzha. In his view, this incident that targeted the City Master was a sign. It meant that their future days in Skywater Jia would not be good. There were about 50 to 60 Xiuzha that came from Little Mountain Jia, but all of them were Ningmai Xiuzha. In Skywater Jia, Ningmai was the most common group. This sudden rush of Ningmai Xiuzha with battle experience had diminished the power of the local powers. The conflict between the Xiuzha of Little Mountain Jia and Skywater Jia was unavoidable. The Xiuzha of Skywater Jia knew this. So how could the Xiuzha that had experienced even crueler battles in Little Mountain Jia be ignorant? Are we going to be able to get there in time? A subordinate said worriedly. The thoughts of normal Xiuzha were much simpler. The Master of Golden Crow City had led them out of Little Mountain Jia, and unknowingly became their spiritual leader. The great majority of people held a grateful attitude. Hearing that the Master of Golden Crow City was trapped, they felt very angry. We're moving now, the head said with a cold snort. They think City Master is weak. He'll break all their teeth. This battle will be a great one. The head bared his teeth and had a vicious expression. He suddenly stood up and glared as he brimming with murderous intent. See how I'll sort out anyone that slacks off today. Don't pack anything, we are moving now. These leaders feared Xiuzha like Clear Sky Old Forefather, but they didn't have any caution regarding the other factions of Skywater Jia. Even more, there was also the Master of Golden City there. The power of the Master of Golden Crow City had been deeply embedded in the hearts of these rebellious people. Many people had the idea, wouldn't it be more tempting if they could persuade the Master of Golden Crow City to take everyone and sweep through Skywater Jia? After continuous urging, the sky above Brightwater City was filled with Xiuzha from Little Mountain Jia. The number of Xiuzha from Little Mountain Jia that were in Brightwater City wasn't much, but there were still around several thousand of them. The Xiuzha from Little Mountain Jia were easy to recognize. The killing energy they had was much thicker than normal Xiuzha. Now each of these Xiuzha had vicious glares. Is that group of people crazy? They dare to move against City Master. Who cares, kill them all. If the tiger doesn't roar, you mistake it for a sick cat? Everyone was very excited as they flew furiously in the direction of 100 Flower Valley. The Xiuzha of Brightwater City had never seen such a procession before, and were dumbstruck where they stood. Those Xiuzha that were smarter raced back to report. Some older Xiuzha had worried expressions. If the Xiuzha from Little Mountain Jia and the Xiuzha from Skywater Jia had a conflict, the state of Skywater Jia would become tumultuous. What many people did not know was that message broadcasted by the sound tablet had spread through all of Skywater Jia. At this time, many Xiuzha were traveling on their swords as they murderously flew in the direction of Brightwater City. If one looked down from the sky, they would see many sword lights gathering with astounding speed towards Brightwater City, as though they were attracted by a magnet. The master of Golden Crow City was the person of most authority of all the Xiuzha from Little Mountain Jia. Without anyone noticing it, he was influencing the direction the affairs in Skywater Jia would take. In the house of the Crow Marquis, Rongwei saw the compound guard run in with a sound tablet, and she was shocked. But when she listened to the message that was being repeatedly broadcasted through the sound tablet, her expression instantly changed. Damn it! Were those people crazy? She knew just how powerful and terrifying the master of Golden Crow City was. The elite force under his command surpassed any troop in Skywater Jia. She remembered the scene of those Xiuzha bowing in farewell towards Mo. If the master of Golden Crow City made a call right now, she uncontrollably shook. That was too frightening. The Marquis was not here. This was not good. Rongwei was like an ant on a hot plate and spun in panic. At this time, a paper crane flew from the sky. Rongwei waved her hand, and the paper crane fell into her palm. When she finished reading, her expression changed dramatically. Brightwater City, Sky Immortal Pavilion. These people from Little Mountain Jia are so aggressive right now. In the future, won't they try to climb on top of our heads in the future? A middle-aged Xiuzha's expression was dark. He was the sect leader of the largest power in Brightwater City, Yin Yang of Wood Sword Sect. We need to let them know whose territory this is. A Xiuzha with a waxy yellow face said faintly. He was wearing a golden-threaded long robe, had bright eyes and an authoritative presence. He was the sect leader of Cloud Divine Sect Hichio. Wood Sword Sect and Cloud Divine Sect were the largest two sects in Brightwater City. Brightwater City was the most prosperous city of Skywater Jia, and was home to 4 of the top 10 sections. Other than the 100 Flower Alliance that Mo had destroyed, Wood Sword Sect was placed 5th, Cloud Divine Sect was placed 7th, and the other, the Blackwater Sect, was 10th. All the other sect leaders present nodded their heads. It had touched many people's nerves that the master of Golden Crow City had attacked 100 Flower Alliance. Wood Sword Sect and Cloud Divine Sect had marriage alliances with 100 Flower Alliance. Mo had moved to destroy 100 Flower Alliance before the other sects had managed to react. If he had taken some more time, his victory would not have been so easily achieved. Blackwater Sect does not want to meddle in this matter. That's good. One less person to share in the spoils. Yin Yang's expression was cold. The other sect leaders had joyed expressions. In their view, with Wood Sword Sect and Cloud Divine Sect as the leaders, the master of Golden Crow City wouldn't be able to make any waves no matter how powerful he was. They had long heard ago that the master of Golden Crow City was very rich, and the 5 enormous slave transporting boats that were filled with all kinds of talismans and rare materials. They were truly treasure ships. Even more, now there was also the enormous wealth of 100 Flower Alliance added to the spoils. How could people's hearts not be moved? Many sects were jealous of 100 Flower Alliance's flower-growing methods. If they could receive the Ling farming methods for the Ling flowers, they would have another steady source of income. So when the 2 big sect leaders called out, many small sects responded. The House of the Crow Marquis, the leader of a small sect, muttered. Ichio's expression was natural. No matter. I have already notified them. I believe they can see the state of affair clearly. Everyone, go back and prepare. Let's set the time for noon tomorrow, Yin Yang said. The sect leaders stood and went back to prepare. After everyone had left, only Yin Yang and Hichio were left in Sky Immortal Pavilion. Hichio asked, "How many people are you preparing to bring?" "I heard that the master of Golden Crow City has 2 elite forces. I really want to see how they compare to my Wood Sword Camp," Yin Yang said proudly. Wood Sword Camp was the most elite troop of Wood Sword Sect, and was famed through Skywater Jia. Hichio clapped and smiled. "I also had the same idea. How about we each take a troop and see who will win?" The Flying Cloud Camp in Cloud Divine Sect was also an elite force known in Skywater Jia. "If both you and I win, then what?" Yin Yang looked at Hichio. "The first one to win is the winner," Hichio smiled. The flower slave growth method of 100 Flower Alliance supposedly originated from the 1,000-year battle. How about we use it as our prize? But since the city master of Golden Crow City has no Jindan, if we use Jindan to pressure people, we will not win honorably. You and I cannot take Jindan. What does sect leader Yen think? A light flashed through Yin Yang's eyes. Wonderful. The two exchanged a look, sparks flying, and did not stand down. The atmosphere of Bright Water City suddenly became tense, and the number of xiuzha that flew through the air dropped dramatically. Many stores that got the news of the battle closed their doors. Tianlingzi and the other two people looked at the large patch of sonic lightning walnuts that floated in front of Zuomo, and their mouths tasted bitter. They really hit a steel board this time. The other had mysterious origins, and his power was far greater than they had imagined. They couldn't describe the bitterness inside. Such a big personage like you. Why did you run to such a poor gutter like Sky Water Jie for? Can't you give us a road to live? A paper crane suddenly flew into Tianlingzi's hand. After Tianlingzi finished looking, the shadow on his face was swept away and he roared with laughter. The other people looked with unfriendliness at Tianlingzi. They really couldn't think what could make Tianlingzi so happy in such terrible circumstances. Tianlingzi passed the paper crane to the other two people and smiled smugly. Sect leader Yen Yang of Wood Sword Sect and sect leader He Chiu of Cloud Divine Sect will be leading their army tomorrow to take this little boy's life. After the two finished, they all had joyful expressions. Haha, we really have foresight. We only need to drag down the master of Golden Crow City, and we will definitely have a mention in the merit record. The three looked at each other and laughed loudly. They were completely ignorant that danger was approaching them. Chapter 318. Human Wrecking Ball. Zuomo and Lil Miss looked at each other and understood what the other was thinking. It hadn't been long but Vermilion Bird Camp completely finished their recovery. The supplies of Vermilion Bird Camp was generous, and each person carried enough Jingxur so that they could quickly recover Ling power. He glanced at Shulong, noticing Shulong's nearly imperceptible nod. He had to silently praise the powerful recovery speed of Mo skills. The power inside his body had also silently recovered. The strength of the Great Day Mo physique far surpassed both the guard camp and his imagination. Zuomo straightened his spine and looked at the three troops opposite him. His heart was filled with the belief that they would win. The silent feeling of confidence had formed between these people without their own knowledge. He shifted his body. Almost at the same moment, Vermilion Bird Camp and Guard Camp started to move. Vermilion Bird Camp was like a gust of clear wind. As the troop gathered and scattered, it was ethereal and nimble, carrying its unique sharp killing intent that was like a blade. While the Guard Camp was like a dense steel flood. They were not quick, but they were a tyrannical wave of destruction. Zuomo was at the very front of the troop. He pressed his lips together tightly. His eyes slightly slowed as his body stood straight like a spear. The sonic lightning walnuts that flew around his body drew out threads of silver light. On his left rear flank was Vermilion Bird Camp waiting to act. If one looked closely, they would find the entire Vermilion Bird Camp was like a compressed spring that was silently trembling and filled with the aura of danger. Gong Sun Cha did not sit on the broad green cloud sword like he usually did. He had stood up, his eyes curving into crescents and a shy smile on his face. A blade-like light flashed through the eyes of the Vermilion Bird Camp xiuzha. On his right rear flank, the guard camp was silent and motionless. They were like a troop of battle servants from thousands of years ago. Shulong was at the very center of the troop, steady and murderous, yet motionless. The black heavy armor encased them tightly and separated them from the outside. The fiendishness from the slightly lowered eyes made people feel the battle intent roiling away behind this deathly silent flood. Zuomo and his people's movements instantly attracted everyone's attention. Tianlingzi's trio changed expression. They commanded their troops to retreat 50 zhang. Zuomo's action of taking out 20 sonic lightning walnuts had destroyed their notions of taking advantage of the situation. But the news that came had given them the hope they could share in the spoils. They had made the decision to not provoke the master of Golden Crow City. As long as they managed to keep track of him, then after tomorrow's battle they would receive some merit. They prepared to distance themselves at any moment. Zuomo decided to fight quickly. He raised his right hand and then chopped down hard. Kill. A cold light flashed through Lil Miss Crescent eyes. Vermilion Bird Camp, who had been waiting for the signal, suddenly exploded. Hundreds of sword energies tore the air. Howls shrieked through the air. Shulong gave a low shout. Kill. The black energy shifted and twisted. Thousands of black energy threads gathered and formed a black flood in the general shape of a snake. Waves of deep shrieks came from an inside. The sky seemed to have suddenly darkened. The aura of destruction and the terrifying killing energy filled the sky. Everyone paled. The trio felt their limbs turn cold. Each of them had pale faces. Only now did they realize how idiotic their ideas were. Regret filled Tian Lingzi's heart. At this time he could only shout at the top of his lungs. Arthur! His pupils suddenly expanded. He lowered his head and saw a hand bursting out from his chest. The Xiozha around Tian Lingzi looked at him as though they saw a ghost. The terror inside their eyes spread through their hearts like spiderwebs. A figure with golden wings on its back disappeared from their field of view. This attack was flawless. The light void wings on his back lightly flapped, and a rich flow of power seemed to flood in like the tide. His figure was like lightning and flew out a great distance. Zuemo did not feel any panic at being in battle. His mind was unusually serene. He carefully experienced the power from the light void wings behind his back. Under the terrifying power, it was not an easy matter to control his posture. This battle, however, was the perfect chance to learn. As for the sonic lightning walnuts, wastefulness was shameful. The light void wings on his back shook, and his vision blurred. He appeared half a zhang in front of a Xiozha. Oh! Zuemo, who had just been very smug, made a strange sound. Before he could react, he smashed onto the other's Ling shield. Ping! The Ling shield instantly broke. Zuemo's earlier momentum did not dissipate, and heavily collided with the other. Zuemo only heard a wail, and the sound of bones breaking. It was like he hit a sandbag. He unconsciously moved the light void wings on his back. A strong force passed over, and his figure uncontrollably disappeared again. He was like a person-shaped wrecking ball that had completely lost control, and bounced between the people in the crowd. But his Great Day Emo physique was very strong. Adding on that terrifying speed, bones broke and limbs tore off wherever he passed. The wails echoed in his ears. He saw the others could not wound him, and decided to ignore them to concentrate on controlling the light void wings. Only when he could truly control the light void wings would he have the true assets to fight against Jindan. Every one of the 6 transformations of the Great Day Emo physique were powerful. If he could adeptly use them, his power would furiously grow. Vermilion Bird Camp used a completely different style. Each platoon was like a blade. They were like butchers dismembering ling beasts, accurate, at ease, and without hurry. Guard Camp was still unmoving at their spot, but the crazily dancing black energy was changing strangely. It suddenly gathered and scattered, sometimes turning into a large snake, and sometimes as countless small snakes. The unpredictability and strangeness of the little Emo kill was fully expressed. However, no matter if it was the waves of charges from the Vermilion Bird Camp, or the little Emo kill of Guard Camp, none of them dared to go close to Zuemo's dashes and crashes made everyone in Vermilion Bird Camp feel shock, and distance themselves. If they were accidentally hit, they would end here. Any Xiozha that boss hit had wailed, flew out a long distance through the air like a sandbag, and was smashed to pieces as they crashed into the ground. No one was left alive. No one was left alive if they were hit. Their hearts felt a chill. They could clearly see that boss posture when he hit others was very strange. This sign made it evident that boss could not fully control himself. If they were killed due to being hit while boss moved uncontrollably, that was a true embarrassment. Who could they complain to? The Xiozha of Vermilion Bird Camp distanced themselves from Zuemo, and traced out a long arc to circle around to kill the Xiozha that wanted to escape. Gong Suncha's smile had frozen on his face. He was looking with shock at the sky. Compared to Vermilion Bird Camp's avoidance, Guard Camp was even more depressed. When they had seen Vermilion Bird Camp moving aside, they had been slightly proud. Since they were attacking from a distance, they were very safe. But shock quickly came onto Shu Long and the others' faces. The black energy of little Mo Kill would go crazy and become uncontrollable for some unknown reason if it neared Boss and dispersed in all directions. In this short period of time, the black energy expended on the enemies wasn't as much as the black energy that Boss had scattered. What situation was this? Having met such a strange situation for the first time, Shulong could only grimace. Out of helplessness, he could only control the little Mo Kill and attack the enemy from the fringes. An extremely strange scene played out in the battlefield in the sky. Little Mo Kill and Vermilion Bird Camp formed the borders of the battlefield together like a steel wall. No Xiuzha was able to escape. Inside this sphere, the sound of impact continuously rang out. Zuo saw the other was not able to damage his Great Day Mo physique, and decided to not care about his posture, and just focus on controlling the light void wings on his back. Therefore, he used all kinds of peerlessly strange positions and astounding speed to hit one Xiuzha after the other out of the spherical battlefield. The people of Vermilion Bird Camp were alert. They were nervous about the enemies that were hit. No one would add another blow to these people. What they were alert about was not getting hit by these enemies. There was an unfortunate Vermilion Bird Camp Xiuzha that had been lightly injured by an enemy that had been sent flying. It was a calamity from the heavens. After a while, the enemies inside the spherical battlefield had completely collapsed. They furiously attacked the outside border. In the sky, the blade-like charges instantly started. Little Mo Kill was activated at full power without anything held back. The wails of the enemy rang in their ears. Flowers spun out in the sky, and like dumplings, they continuously fell down. The minds of these Sky Water Jia Xiuzha had been robbed, and their morale was at its lowest point. The entire troop was collapsing at a rapid rate. Having lost the commander, with collapsing morale, without motivation, they were just rabble. In front of elite troops like Vermilion Bird Camp and Guard Camp, they were a group of sheep waiting for slaughter. The merciless slaughter only continued for a short hour before the entire battlefield was cleared. None of the spectating Xiuzha were able to maintain their calm. They looked with pale white faces at the empty battlefield, and looked at the master of Golden Crow City's subordinates methodically looting the battlefield. These people's practiced and crisp actions, these movements that did not have any presence of killing, made the Xiuzha from Sky Water Jia smell the scene of blood and fire after such a battle. So weak. Lei Peng jerked a jade pendant from a corpse as he snorted coldly. Just this group of trashy people, and they want to attack us. They really don't know anything. People die for wealth, birds die for food. What's so strange about that? Weren't we the same in the past? Nian Lu did not even raise his head, his movements were clean and brisk. Lei Peng stilled at the words. Tilting his head to think, he nodded and said, "That's true." He then furrowed his brow and said, "But we are no longer the same." "But how are we not the same?" Nian Lu's hands stopped moving. He straightened his spine and said seriously, "We aren't the same now." But he also could not pinpoint where they were not the same. After thinking fruitlessly for a while, Lei Peng was impatient. "Whatever, what are we thinking about that for? Just follow boss. In any case, and was thinking that our way of living now isn't so bad. It's worth it even if we die." Nian Lu made a sound of agreement, his eyes deep. "That's right. We lived long enough since we didn't die in Little Mountain Jia." Zuo panted heavily. It was the first time he tried out close combat fighting in a real fight like this. He hadn't felt it before, but when he stopped, he felt his entire body was unspeakably sore. He inhaled sharply. It looked as though this Great Day Mo physique had its limits. He couldn't be so brash in the future. "You guys are too vicious." A choked female voice came from the sky. Zuo raised his head, and found a female Xiuzha within the crowd was swearing and pointing at his nose. The surroundings suddenly became silent. The faces of the Xiuzha beside Zuo all darkened. "What? Do you want to kill me too?" The female Xiu proudly flew out of the crowd. Her eyes held tears, and her expression was excited. They weren't even defending themselves. Why can't you give them a road to live? Why do you have to kill them all? Chapter 319. If you want to fight, fight. Zuo rolled his eyes. He decided to ignore her. This kind of woman didn't have a clear head. Since the two sides had started to fight, if one spoke of benevolence, wasn't that just asking for death? Crazy person. Let's go. He turned his head and said. Xu Long led guard camp back to the slave-transporting ships. They were able to fly for short distances, but their speed was slow. They liked using the steady slave-transporting boats more. The vermilion bird camp swam in the sky as they warily looked at the surrounding Xiuzha. Come on, kill. Kill. The emotions of the female Xiu became increasingly excited. You killed so many people already. You shouldn't be afraid of killing one more. What? You don't dare? You people from Little Mountain Jia come to our sky water Jia, and the first thing you do is to kill. Go back to your Little Mountain Jia. We don't welcome you. The surrounding sky water Jia Xiuzha shifted. The female Xiu's words really struck many of the sky water Jia Xiuzha's hearts. They were already very resistant to the Xiuzha of Little Mountain Jia. Many people's eyes became unfriendly. Some of the powers that had been observing started to shift. Zuomo's face suddenly became cold. He stopped in the air. Vermilion bird camp started to consolidate. Having just stepped onto the slave-transporting boat, Xu Long's face darkened. The faces of the other people became ugly. They came from Little Mountain Jia, and were abnormally sensitive to the atmosphere of their surrounding environment. They felt enmity. Zuo did not speak. He was not shocked at this scene. To the Xiuzha of Sky Water Jia, they were just outsiders. The arrival of Xiuzha from Little Mountain Jia had already significantly changed the status quo in Sky Water Jia, which was why their enmity was so strong. You won't even have mercy on women? The more the female Xiu shouted, the more sorrowful and angry she became. Didn't you kill sect leader Su Yu? What? If you have the guts, then kill me. The voice suddenly stopped. The head that flew into the air, her expression full of disbelief. She seemed to still be unable to believe that Zuo dared to kill her under the eyes of the public. The Xiuzha of Sky Water Jia instantly rumbled. Many people also had expressions of disbelief. Too arrogant. Everyone, let's kill them. The people from Little Mountain Jia dare to come run amok in our Sky Water Jia. Everyone, fight together. The crowd was extremely furious. Many people had blood-filled eyes as they yearned to fight. The powers that had been observing from the side were slightly wavering. Their subordinates had already sank into argument. Listen well. Zuo coldly stated. For some reason, there seemed to be a fire burning in his chest. While in Little Mountain Jia, he had assumed that after leaving Little Mountain Jia he would find paradise. Yet what he never thought was that he would immediately encounter something that broke through his bottom line in Sky Water Jia. He thought of those flower slave with scattered minds and dazed expressions, entirely wrapped in ling flowers. The scornful ruckus in the surroundings entered his ears. He wanted to laugh, but he found that he wasn't able to laugh. There seemed to be a breath stuck at his chest. Savagery and killing intent twisted and roiled in his chest. Therefore he spoke. The surroundings instantly became silent. I don't care who you are. If you want to fight, fight. His eyes were deep, and his voice seemed to float across from far away. Don't waste words. We can't compare to you. We are much cleaner and in the open. The surroundings were deathly silent. The people looked dazedly at the master of Golden Crow City in the air. No one had expected that the master of Golden Crow City would say such arrogant and tyrannical words at such a time. Was this person crazy? Did he really think he could really do what he wanted in Sky Water Jia, with just the people he had? Everyone was shocked by Zuomo's words. No one spoke. Zuo slowly looked around. His sharp gaze made many people have the impulse to turn their face away. He raised his right hand in the air. Anyone that attacks, kill them. The voice was like the wind and snow that blew in the winter, not loud, but it was chilling to the bone as it swept everyone's hearts. No matter if it was Vermilion Bird Camp or Guard Camp, everyone, including the Forging Division, all of them felt their blood boil. An indescribable feeling came from their hearts. They couldn't help but shout together, kill. The shouts of several thousand people together were like thunder as it spread. The Sky Water Jia Xiuzha that had been wanting to fight were all stunned by this shout. Their slightly heated heads instantly cleared. They had never heard such a fierce and domineering presence from any other troop. The master of Golden Crow City and Hundred Flower Alliance had personal grievances. That wasn't a secret in Skywater Jia. Ever since the master of Golden Crow City had led tens of thousands of people out of Little Mountain Jia, he had instantly entered the attention of the large powers of Skywater Jia. The origins of the master of Golden Crow City were mysterious and were hard to find. But the presence of the Hundred Flower Alliance insignia on the 5 slave transporting boats gave them a great deal to speculate on. One factor for their attention was that they desired the wealth of the master of Golden Crow City. Supposedly, the 5 slave transporting boats were packed with large numbers of talismans and materials. After defeating Hundred Flower Alliance, the spoils would be even richer, and greed made their hearts move. Another factor was the rejection of Little Mountain Jieshioja by Skywater Jieshioja. The factions were especially unaccepting of any power that could destabilize their influence. Just as the factions looked at each other and wanted to discuss, their expressions changed and looked towards the sky. Large patches of dots appeared in the sky. Before they could see clearly, the blinding sword energy that lit up when people were flying on the sword at their fastest speed lit up the entire sky and forced them to narrow their eyes. City Master. Huh? It's the City Master. The shouts came like a tide. These Little Mountain Jieshioja that had come to help were very excited at this time. All of the surviving Shioja from Little Mountain Jia were Ningmai, and they were in their 40s or above. They were used to the way of the world. However, none of these people could keep their composure. Fei Shan was not an exception. He found he could not calm down. He suddenly recalled the magnificent battles at Golden Crow City. They were deeply embedded in his heart. He still remembered his emotions at that time, especially when the city master had led everyone to swear at the clear sky old forefather. He had imagined how exhilarating it would be to fight under the command of the master of Golden Crow City. He hadn't thought such a day would really come. He was very excited. The master of Golden Crow City looked to be in his early 20s. Among these 50 and 60-year-old Ningmai, he was somewhat outrageously young. But this youth that was outrageously young seemed to have a charisma that made people trust and obey him, and to be willing to fight for him. The Skywater Jieshioja jumped in fright, and hurriedly rode their swords to flee. In a short while, all of the Skywater Jieshioja had left the enormous Hundred Flower Valley. This change was so sudden that some Little Mountain Jieshioja were too excited and wanted to chase before they were pulled back by their fellows. Stop shouting. Listen to the City Master. Which of you is more able than City Master? Everyone listened to the City Master. The heads of the little factions in this crowd of Shioja spoke, and those Shioja making a fuss instantly closed their mouths. In terms of command, no one dared to compete against Zhuamo. At the beginning, Zhuamo was quite puzzled. When he was informed that these Shioja had all heard that he was in danger and came to help, he was dumbstruck where he stood. He was very moved. Truthfully, he had never thought of these people when he fought with Clear Sky Old Forefather. He just did it for himself. So he had never thought these people would remember this. His heart was very warm. The darkness created by Hundred Flower Alliance was swept away. The sun seemed much brighter. He bowed towards the people. This one thanks everyone here. This group of Shioja instantly became panicked. What is City Master doing? City Master saved our lives. This is what we should do. Yes, yes. The people spoke over each other as they returned the bow. After standing up, Zhuamo swept the surroundings and said with a smile, "Let's go down to rest." The people all agreed and landed on a mountain in Hundred Flower Valley. Everyone felt very close upon seeing each other, and they were even noisier when they gathered together. Each person had a sunny smile on their face. Some chatty people had grouped together and started to converse. The heads of some of the factions were circled around Zhuamo as they held a discussion. City Master, I just received news. Cloud Divine Sect and Wood Sword Sect have gathered more than 10 smaller sects and are planning to attack us tomorrow. A faction head said worriedly. To be able to become a leader, he naturally had his talents. This leader's abilities could not be underestimated as he was be able to place spies in Brightwater City so quickly. Seeing many people were unmoved, He hurriedly explained the status of Cloud Divine Sect and Wood Sword Sect in Skywater Jia. After his explanation, everyone all inhaled sharply. Zuomo's expression was normal as he raised his folded hands to this leader. I have not asked for this big brother's name. This leader said with some panic. City Master is really troubling this one. This one is Zheng Wei. City Master can just call me by name. Don't say anything more about big brother. Zuomo smiled. Can Head Jing give us some more details? Zheng Wei hurriedly narrated the news that he had just received from the beginning and introduced the sections. After he finished, everyone was silent. The other side's strength far surpassed their imagination. If there really were so many people. Everyone turned to look at Zuomo. Zuomo unconsciously furrowed his brow. He felt shocked at this news. If he had received this news in any other circumstances, he would only do one thing. Take everyone and flee. But right now he would not flee. He was sure that if he fled, the other Xiozha of Little Mountain Jia would become the targets to vent hatred. The Xiozha of Skywater Jia would use this chance to weaken the powers of the Little Mountain Jia Xiozha, until they were sure the Xiozha of Little Mountain Jia were not a threat to them. He previously had not felt these Xiozha had any connection to him. But now that he knew he could not just leave and end it, many paper cranes suddenly flew in from the sky and into the crowd of people. Li Shaoxi can arrive tonight. I just knew they wouldn't be able to stop themselves. Old Man Yang has his brothers and is hurrying over. Several paper cranes flew into Zheng Wei's hands. After Zheng Wei finished reading, he was overjoyed. He said excitedly, City Master, they've all come. Everyone is coming. A blush came onto Gong Sun Cha's face. His smile was even more bashful and shy as his eyes flashed with an unusual brightness. Xu Long stood silently beside Zuomo. But his heavy breathing exposed the desire for battle inside. Zuomo's mood was unsteady. He suddenly stood up as he looked towards Bright Water City. Well then, let's fucking fight. Chapter 320, Move Out. The night came. The mountain peaks of Hundred Flower Valley were filled with light and sound. Zuomo stood at the highest mountain peak. The campground below was very busy. His gaze turned to the empty darkness that held unpredictable dangers. He knew that many eyes were staring back at him from the darkness. The people were waiting for tomorrow to come. But thick clouds blanketed the entire sky. There wasn't one thread of moonlight. A hint of mirth floated at the corner of his lips. Ma Fan was sneaking in the darkness like a ghost. His movements were soundless. What was even more astounding was that none of his movements created any ripples of Ling power. Lei Peng and the others that were watching from far away had expressions of admiration. Ma Fan had taught all of them hidden movement spells, but when Ma Fan activated the spells, he wasn't just slightly more familiar with them. His actions were light and relaxed. As expected of the core that Lil Miss had appointed, Ma Fan crouched as he moved stealthily like an intangible shadow. He was merged into the darkness. The noises from Hundred Flower Valley could be heard from afar, and contrasted against the silence of the surroundings. He suddenly thought of his life in the past, before he had encountered Boss. He had frequently had to do work that required traveling in the night. He did not like darkness. At that time, he had only wanted to find a steady job and not have to fight for his life in the shadows. After the calamity of Little Mountain Jia, his situation had deteriorated even more. Fortunately, he had several good skills and managed to survive, but the desire for a stable life had gotten stronger. He wasn't a person with ambition. Being appointed the core by Lil Miss had not made him happy. It was the opposite. The training that he had done far surpassed everyone else. He improved very quickly. Even now, he was one of the 2 people that had the most influence in Sky Peak Platoon. He had originally assumed he would quickly feel tired. This life of training every day was not something he wanted. But to his shock, he found he did not dislike it like he had predicted. He had started to accept this troop and gradually started to like this troop. It wasn't for the stimulation of battle, or for those spells and formations, but for hope. This troop, without him noticing it, made him feel hope, feel sunshine. Even if he was walking in the darkness, he didn't have any negative feelings like he did in the past. Every person behind his back made him feel safe and trusted. Thinking about that, his eyes unconsciously glanced to his side. The space there was empty. Usually Xieshan would appear at that spot. A few days ago Xieshan had entered secluded meditation, and had not come out even now. He couldn't help but feel slightly worried. After being paired together for such a long time, they cooperated very well, and had great feelings for each other. His expression suddenly shifted. He stopped his nonsensical thinking, and his figure paused. Everyone instantly became nervous. Without any words, everyone spread out and silently advanced forwards. 2 people were hiding in a tree. I want to see how long these people from Little Mountain Jia can be happy for. One of the people said furiously. Daylight will be the time of their execution. The other person said greedily. Supposedly, they are swimming in wealth. I wonder if we can get 1 or 2 items. Please, we're just assigned to watch the wind. What hopes do we have of getting anything good? It's already pretty good to get some 3rd-grade jingsher. Hey, the sect is pretty generous this time. 20 pieces of 3rd-grade jingsher. That's enough for us to use for a while. 20 pieces? I wonder how much will remain by the time we get them? The 2 people suddenly felt a cold flash against their necks. Their pupils suddenly expanded, but they were not able to make any sound. Several shadows appeared by their corpses. It was Ma Fan and the others. 10th one. Nian Lu said lightly. The other side really had sent out a great number of scouts around 100 Flower Valley. In this little while they had gotten rid of 10 scouts. It was smooth sailing for these people of Sky Peak Platoon, that comprehended sword essence to do ambushes. Ma Fan carefully stripped the 2 people clean. Seeing there was nothing suspicious, he raised his head. We need to be quick. It is almost 1 o'clock. Everyone had hurried expressions. Almost 1 o'clock. Ma Fan led everyone to quickly leave and search for the next target. They were silently but rapidly advancing along a path that was very out of the way. Along the way they occasionally got rid of some scouts. But this road was really far out of the way, and they did not encounter too many scouts. When they came out of a mountain valley, they could see Brightwater City and its lights. Brightwater River was serene and silent in the night. Ma Fan released a breath. It was not yet 1 o'clock. He nodded at Lei Peng and Nian Lu behind him. The 2 understood and quickly disappeared into the night. The remaining people were divided into several groups that disappeared behind the 2 people. Ma Fan looked at the 3 people remaining beside him and said lightly, "Everyone, rest for a while." Finishing, he crossed his legs and sat. The other 3 did not waste words and also meditated. In a deep valley that was once the area that 100 Flower Alliance kept its flower slaves. The location was very out of the way and hidden. Zuemo had already looted the entire mountain valley, and left nothing behind. This empty mountain valley was filled with seated people at this moment. Zhongru said in a light voice next to Gong Sun Cha's ear. Darren, it's 1. The smile on Gong Sun Cha's face grew with a bashfulness that could not be hidden. He opened his eyes that flashed with a pressuring sharpness. Depart. A troop silently advanced along a narrow mountain valley. It was possible to see figures flashing along the 2 sides of the mountain valley. The troop did not slow down at all. Everyone knew that those were the members of Sky Peak Platoon. They had swept this path clean. Guarding at the mouth of the valley, Ma Fan suddenly opened his eyes and saw a shadowy troop. His heart finally landed. They had not failed the mission that Lil Miss had given them. The troop silently streamed and flew out of the valley. The dense woods outside the mountain valley gave them the best concealment. When Gong Sun Cha walked out of the mountain valley, he suddenly stopped in his steps and turned to look at the highest mountain peak. He couldn't help but lightly laugh. Xixiang, enjoy getting blown on by the wind. After watching as the troop disappeared in the night, Ma Fan moved away his eyes and said contentedly, "Let's go back." Wood Sword Sect. Master, let this disciple be first tomorrow. A Xiozha with handsome features couldn't help but say. He was Yin Yang's beloved disciple, Gao Xiu, and in charge of Wood Sword Camp. Yin Yang looked with benevolent affection at Gao Xiu. He had put great effort onto Gao Xiu. Gao Xiu had not failed his expectations to be in charge of Wood Sword Camp before he was 25. What many people did not know was that Gao Xiu had just received the White-Silver Battle General Jade Medal. To be able to become a White-Silver Battle General at 25, this talent was enough to dominate all of Skywater Jia, and no one could rival him. He could understand his disciples' desire for battle. Just having received the White-Silver Battle General Jade Medal, he desired to use real combat to train himself. "Don't worry, you can't even avoid the fight if you wanted to tomorrow," Yin Yang said with a smile. Then his expression became serious. "But you have to be careful. There are 2 troops under the command of the Master of Golden Crow City. To be able to kill their way out of Little Mountain Jia, they naturally are very strong. You are familiar with Rong Wei. That little girl's eyes aren't bad. If she thinks they are elite, then they are definitely elite. This disciple will definitely fight with everything, and not fail the reputation of our sect," Gao Xiu said. Yin Yang shook his head. "You are wrong. My demand of you is not to make great achievements, but to make no mistakes." Gao Xiu raised his head in shock. "Then why did I make the wager with He Chiu when I know the other is an elite force?" Yang said meaningfully. "Wood Sword Camp is like a sword, and it needs to be sharpened before it can show its power. This Master of Golden Crow City is the whetstone. But we need to be careful or we may break against it. You need to be especially careful of your safety. As long as you are here, Wood Sword Camp is here, and you will not want for opportunities." Gao Xiu was moved, and he respectfully bowed. "This disciple understands." Yin Yang suddenly asked, "What is the situation at 100 Flower Valley?" Gao Xiu hurriedly said, "The little mountain Jiexiozha of this area have almost all gathered at 100 Flower Valley. There are also many little mountain Jiexiozha that are heading over from all places. The Master of Golden Crow City really has skill to have such a high reputation among this group of people." Yin Yang praised. "If we give him the time, he may become a warlord." "Right, where is he now?" "Keep track of his movements." "He is on the main peak of 100 Flower Valley. Our people have been keeping an eye on him from afar," Gao Xiu said with a smile. "Supposedly he has been standing in the wind. He must be having a headache over tomorrow's battle. A strong dragon cannot suppress the local snakehead. You have to securely remember this, and not do as the Master of Golden Crow City is doing. This disciple understands." Zuo stood at the top of the mountain as the cold wind blew. He couldn't help but swear. What stupid plan needs Ji to stand up here in the wind for the whole night? If this keeps on going, Ji will go crazy in the wind. Ague silently sat next to him. Other than when he fought, wherever Zuo went, she would follow him like a puppet. Lil Black was snoozing on Ague's head. Lil Fire and Lil Pagoda were full of energy as they rolled around on her body happily. Silly Bird was silently standing next to Ague. When she heard Zuomo's words, she couldn't help but roll her eyes. Somewhat bored, Zuo reached out to Lil Fire. "Lil Fire, come over." Hearing this, Lil Fire instantly joyfully flew in front of Zuo. Zuo grabbed Lil Fire. It was very soft, and nice to grasp. Both of his hands were grasping Lil Fire as he put Lil Fire in front of his eyes in curiosity. He tightened and loosened his grip. Why aren't you sprouting fire?" Lil Pagoda, who had also wanted to join in, saw the situation, and instantly shrank back. The pitiful Lil Fire was kneaded in Zuomo's hands until it sprouted a small flame. However, it never could have thought Zuo was even more motivated, and kneaded even more happily. So interesting. Very interesting. Lil Fire became a bag that could sprout fire. With a squeeze, it would sprout a thread of fire. Lil Fire chirped sorrowfully, but no matter how it struggled, it could not escape these demonic hands, and could only sprout fire in humiliation. Lil Pagoda ran to Ague's head, and watched sympathetically with Lil Black at Lil Fire. Zuomo's hands suddenly felt pain and uncontrollably relaxed. Lil Fire took the chance and broke free of the demonic hands. Zuo turned his face. What welcomed him was Silly Bird's gaze filled with scorn. Just now, it had been her that pecked Zuomo's hand. He looked dazedly at Silly Bird and was astounded. That peck was so strong. He had the great Damo physique, but he couldn't keep his grip under the peck. He looked with disbelief at Silly-Bird, but the scene that followed shocked him even more. Chapter 321. Ambush. Silly-Bird suddenly turned her head around, and her bird eyes stared at the thick cloud cover far in the sky. It was the first time Zuaimo had seen Silly-Bird have such a vicious gaze, as though she had seen something she extremely disliked. Just as Zuaimo was puzzled, Silly-Bird suddenly gave a long call, her wings spreading, and then she disappeared. Zuaimo only saw a shadow fly by. When he managed to react, he saw a shocking scene. Silly-Bird was like a bolt of gray lightning that entered the thick black clouds. What was this bird doing? Zuaimo dazedly looked at the clouds, his mind unable to react. Just as he prepared to go and take a look, a shadow flew close and appeared in front of him. It was Silly-Bird. There were traces of blood on Silly-Bird's long beak. Her gaze was vicious as she puffed her head and chest high, her body wrapped in killing intent. She called out a clear long note that rang into the distance. A shadow suddenly dropped out of the clouds. Zuaimo saw it clearly. It was a black bat. The stomach of this black bat had been eviscerated, exposing the innards, and it clearly wouldn't live. Black bats were third-grade ling beasts. Their ears were extremely keen, and they were mostly used for information gathering. However, it was not easy to raise a black bat. They were very expensive. Normal scouts couldn't afford them. Master of Golden Crow City, you dare to kill my black bat, tomorrow, I will make you die. A male's shout came far out in the distance inside the clouds. Zuaimo ignored it. His eyes were tightly locked onto Silly-Bird. The viciousness in Silly-Bird's eyes quickly retreated, and she quickly became as proud and aloof as she usually was. If it wasn't for the traces of blood still on Silly-Bird's beak, Zuaimo definitely would have thought what just happened was his delusion. He huddled in front of Silly-Bird. Oh, you look very normal. Silly-Bird rolled her eyes and ignored him. She raised her bird head up high, strutted her bird walk, and left. When did this bird get so vicious? Zuaimo rubbed his chin as he said to himself. He wanted to chase, but when he looked at the surroundings and remembered that he still had the mission of keeping the other side's spies occupied, he could only stand on the mountain to be blown by the wind. He shook his head and decided to ignore the bird. After she had gone out to show off last time, she hadn't been very normal. Ague, do you think we can win? Ague was sitting woodenly. Zuaimo did not care and sat down next to Ague. Looking out at the dark black sky, he became unfocused. He didn't notice an extremely faint, almost imperceptible purple light flash suddenly through Ague's empty eyes. Bright Water City was surrounded by a large river. This large river was Bright Water River, and it was the origin of Bright Water City's name. In the dark, Bright Water River was so quiet it seemed to be sleeping. There weren't any waves. Suddenly, the water's surface started to ripple and a figure slowly rose out of the river water. This person looked around for a while, saw no one was around, and took out a little black umbrella. The little umbrella flew out of his hand and turned to an intangible black silk that floated onto the sky above the river. A moment later, figures rose up from the river water. In the span of a few breaths, the surface of the river was filled with people. These people silently floated into the sky above the river. This blackling hiding umbrella really lives up to being a fourth-grade talisman. Wei Ran lifted his head to look at the black silk that was floating in the sky. This ethereal black silk covered all of them. They couldn't be seen from the outside. This blackling hiding umbrella was one of the fourth-grade talismans from Boss Spoils. It could hide people, and more importantly, it could stop Ling energy ripples from spreading into the surrounding area. Even as he praised, he took out Jingshi and started to recover his Ling power. No one spoke. Everyone silently recovered their Ling power. Gong Sun Cha didn't need to recover Ling power. He examined the nearby Bright Water City, and his lips curved. The powers of Bright Water City clearly didn't think highly of them. Bright Water City almost had no defenses at all. The blackling hiding umbrella was a powerful talisman, but there were many formations and talismans that could detect it. But they hadn't encountered even one of them. The loose defense was full of holes in Gong Sun Cha's eyes. He thought it was a pity that they were not here to attack the city. 1 hour later, Everyone finished their recovery. The Blackling hiding umbrella was put away. It could not be moved when it was activated. That was its only flaw. Vermilion Bird Camp flew 20 zhang into the sky. Gong Sun Cha sat on the broad green cloud sword. Gazing down at Bright Water City, the corners of his mouth moved up. A cold light flashed through his eyes as he said lightly, "Start." Hiss. Vermilion Bird Camp suddenly moved. The lanterns on the streets gave off a warm yet bright light. Tonight's Bright Water City was excited yet frantic. Large amounts of Xiuzha had gathered in Bright Water City. They were waiting for dawn. The actions taken this time were the most significant ones in Bright Water City's recent history. Everyone was full of excitement and anticipation. Wood Sword Camp and Flying Cloud Camp had already reached Bright Water City and made camp. The other sects were urgently gathering combat Xiuzha in order to attend this great banquet. The tea houses and bars were filled with people. People even filled the streets. The passerby on the streets suddenly heard a strange sound. They stilled and couldn't resist raising their heads. Large numbers of figures flashed through the sky and caused endless howls. Hiss! Everyone without exception inhaled sharply. This troop's presence was shocking and were definitely an elite force. Many people started to speculate which sect's elite force had arrived. This grand banquet had attracted the gaze of countless sections. The Xiuzha flashed rapidly through the sky. Before they could react, the people had disappeared. So strong, I don't know which sect had sent them. This really is a great force. Hee, tomorrow is going to be a spectacle. Everyone became more excited as they chatted. Gao Xiu came from the sect leader's place and returned to the vast Sun Hall. The Wood Sword Camp Xiuzha he encountered along the way bowed to him. Everyone could not disguise the excitement on their faces. They had hurried to Bright Water City in the afternoon and camped in vast Sun Hall. Gao Xiu's vice commander and a group of Xiuzha came over. "Darren, what did sect leader say?" "We're up first tomorrow," Gao Xiu said with a smile, excitement flashing through his eyes. "Great. Haha, we'll let the people from Flying Cloud Camp to see how strong we are." The Xiuzha of Wood Sword Camp cheered excitedly. They were the best disciples of Wood Sword sect. Hadn't they trained for decades just for this day? Gao Xiu suddenly furrowed his brows. He could hear trembling vibrations coming close to them. He knew what it was. That was the sound produced when a large troop flew by. The other Xiuzha were also alerted to the sound. "Which bastard dares to fly above our heads?" Someone couldn't help swearing. Camps like Wood Sword Camp were very wary of people flying over their heads, and all the sects would try to avoid flying over other camps. This was an unwritten rule. Has Flying Wind Camp come to Bright Water City? Gao Xiu suddenly asked. "They arrived 4 hours ago," his subordinate answered. Gao Xiu's expression suddenly changed as he shouted, "Enemy attack!" The black patch of Xiuzha appeared with astonishing speed in everyone's vision. Boom! Countless sword energies rained down like a storm. The black night was suddenly lit up by countless grand sword energies. The entire vast Sun Hall was completely covered by the other side's sword energies. The Xiuzha around Gao Xiu all paled, but they were well trained and activated their Ling shields to protect Gao Xiu. Some other Wood Sword Camp Xiuzha gritted their teeth and shouted, "Kill!" Hundreds of figures flew up against the rain of sword energies. Pew pew pew. The Ling shield of a Wood Sword Xiuzha cracked. He wasn't able to make any response before dozens of sword energies pierced his body. Dozens of blood blossoms formed. Under the rain of sword energies, the sprays of blood were like explosions on these Wood Sword Camp Xiuzha. The grand vast Sun Hall was instantly destroyed by the sword energy rain, and was left riddled with holes. "You dare!" An angry shout suddenly sounded like lightning. Right after, a middle-aged Xiuzha holding an almond yellow little flag waved out layers of yellow light. When the dense sword energy rain hit these yellow light curtains, they were only able to make ripples. The morale of the Wood Sword Camp Xiuzha increased. "Ha Jindan," Lil Miss lightly breathed. Just as the middle-aged Xiuzha appeared, Wei Ran had locked onto the other. What he hadn't expected was the other had moved faster than he did. He snorted coldly, and took his division's Xiuzha to fly out in an arc into the sky, then turned and started to dive. Their speed suddenly increased. A piercing sound roared in the air. Even among the sounds of battle, the howling that caused people's scalp to prickle. Wei Ran raised the flying sword in his hand. The Xiozha behind him all raised their flying swords. 100 kill. Wei Ran suddenly bellowed, the flying sword in his hand heavily striking down. 100 kill. The second division behind him all shouted, their flying sword striking down. A terrifying sword energy more than 20 zhonglong destructively tore through the air as it descended from the sky and landed heavily against the yellow light curtain. Ping! The yellow light curtain suddenly splintered, and only half of the enormous sword energy was left. A thread of blood came from the corner of the middle-aged person's mouth. Viciousness flashed through his eyes. He raised his head and saw the half-section of sword energy coming towards him. He said, "Good attack." He pointed with the almond yellow flag. A blinding yellow light collided directly with the remaining section of sword energy. Boom! Wei Ran only saw a patch of whiteness, and was not able to see anything. He gritted his teeth, gathered his last bit of Ling power, and threw what was in his hand down hard. Just as the item in his hand left, a large force passed over him. He couldn't control his body, and was thrown into the air. Up in the sky, almost lacking all energy, he gave a smile. Idiot! Boom! Even more powerful explosions came from below. Sonic lightning walnuts. He had just thrown down a sonic lightning walnut. The 12 division leaders had all been given a sonic lightning walnut by boss. Before the 100 kill attack, he had already prepared the sonic lightning walnut. Relying on just 100 kill wasn't enough to kill a Jindan, but after 100 kill, even a Jindan couldn't escape the sonic lightning walnut. Boom! A rapid series of sonic lightning explosions came from below. At this time, all of the division leaders had bombed down the sonic lightning walnuts that they had held. Before they could clearly see what the explosions did, a voice came from beside their ear. Retreat! Chapter 322, Victory. On the mountaintop, Zuemo saw the blinding light appearing above Brightwater City, and suddenly jumped up from the ground as he roared with laughter. Yes! Immediately after, blinding sword energies lit up the sky like a meteor shower that flew towards 100 Flower Valley. At this time, Vermilion Bird Camp no longer needed to conceal themselves. The people that had Ling power remaining all channeled their Ling power to draw out blinding lights. The Xiozha of Brightwater City all finally reacted. Sword Xiao continuously flew into the sky, and chased after the blinding lights. Soon a grand scene appeared in the sky. Following after thousands of sword energies were an even greater number of sword energies. Almost all the Sword Xiao of Brightwater City had come out. The most eye-catching was Flying Cloud Camp that flew at the very front. Flying Cloud Camp were well-trained and responded the quickest. After the 12 sonic lightning walnuts exploded together, they had also been affected by the power. Hushan's eyes could spit fire. He had never thought the master of Golden Crow City would be so insane and daring to this level. He didn't bother looking down at Brightwater City. After such a terrifying explosion, there wouldn't be anyone left alive at the campsite of Wood Sword Camp. Before this night, he had never thought that Wood Sword Camp would be destroyed in a single night, and be destroyed so completely. The relationship between Flying Cloud Camp and Wood Sword Camp couldn't be called harmonious, but he gritted his teeth. He felt there was a burst of fire inside his chest that wanted to get out. This group of bastards. The distance between the Vermilion Bird Camp and Flying Cloud Camp remained steady as the chase continued, neither side gaining on the other. Flying Cloud Camp had reacted the quickest, and so they tightly followed behind the other. Vermilion Bird Camp had made great expenditures in the ambush just now, and was at their weakest. If they could catch up, Flying Cloud Camp would definitely have the advantage. In the night, the two sides did not have any care, and let all of their Ling power go. One in front and one in the back. They were like two waves of meteorites that flew with astounding speed flying along the bottom of a thick cloud layer. Hushan glared with wide eyes. The speed of the other side was beyond their expectations. They had to use all their Ling power, and they were just able to keep up. Before, Hushan had heard that the master of Golden Crow City that had two elite forces. Looking at it now, they really were elite. Flying Cloud Camp was famous for its speed, and Hushan was shocked that the other was even faster than they were. Wait a moment. The master of Golden Crow City had 2 elite forces. Hushan's heart suddenly sank. His limbs felt cold as his face paled. 2 elite forces. Where was the other elite force? Not good. At this moment, a deep voice sounded out from the cloud layer. Kill. Thousands of people shouted together. Kill. Hushan felt his vision blur. Countless black snakes suddenly burrowed out of the cloud layer and rushed towards them. Their speed had been raised to the maximum. They didn't even have the time to think, much less dodge, before these black snakes had reached them. Hushan could clearly see the fangs of the black snakes. He watched as the black snake penetrated his body. Disbelief and shock remained in Hushan's wide eyes. He almost couldn't believe he would die so easily. The moment the black snake entered his body, he felt his body become cold as something icy passed through his body. The channels in his body were destroyed, and he lost control of his body. His body flipped as it fell through the air and crashed heavily on the ground. Pia pia pia. The sounds of impact were like raindrops that did not end. Each of the black snakes penetrated a body and came out the back, its features twisted. With the remainder of its power, it usually would penetrate between 3 to 5 people. This change happened in a flash, so quick that people were basically unable to react. Flying Cloud Camp instantly descended into chaos. They seemed to have been heavily swatted. The troop was scattered by the charge of black energy, and were left with heavy casualties and injuries. Due to the speed they were traveling at, the distance between the Xiozha in the front and back of the troop was too small. Once the front lines had turned to chaos, the Xiozha at the back didn't have the time to respond, and they collided together. The sound of bones cracking and flesh tearing, as well as grunts and wails, appeared simultaneously in this short moment. The battle immediately reached its climax, its grandest moment, the time of death. Like a meteor shower, the beautiful sword energies seemed to have been extinguished by this black wind, only leaving behind a few that fled in terror. Sneak attack, baiting, ambush, one tactic after the other. In one night, the 2 most famous elite forces of Bright Water City were almost completely destroyed. At this time, Xu Long showed his rich battle experience. He did not choose to use the successive Mo kill, which was more powerful, but used the weaker and more easily controlled little Mo kill. The more powerful the Xiozha were, the more vicious and cruel the battles between them were, especially large-scale battles like this one. An enormous slave transporting boat emerged from the clouds and appeared in everyone's view. The high-speed pursuit had caused the distance between Flying Cloud Camp and the other Bright Water City Xiozha to increase. Leaving, Xu Long able to leisurely retreat towards 100 Flower Valley. The Bright Water City Xiozha that managed to arrive could only watch the slave transporting boat enter the shadows of 100 Flower Valley. No one dared to give chase. Many of them did not understand what was going on. They didn't know what had happened in Bright Water City, but the destruction of Flying Cloud Camp had happened in front of their eyes. Just now, the famed Flying Cloud Camp had almost been completely annihilated. They had personally seen the entire process. The ease that the master of Golden Crow City had accomplished this made them feel a bone-aching chill. Terror gripped their hearts like the night. The sky was almost completely filled with Xiozha from Bright Water City, but no one dared to move closer. The entire sky was unusually quiet with a deathly silence. This is a good chance to charge and kill. The first words that Gong Sun Cha said to Zhua Mo when he got off the green cloud sword was this. Zhua Mo understood what Gong Sun Cha meant. The other side's morale had reached the bottom. If he took the Xiozha of Little Mountain Jia and charged out right now, not even half of the Xiozha in the air right now would remain. But he shook his head and said, "This is enough." His eyes looked at the camp inside the valley that seemed to be boiling, and began wandering off in thought. Just as he finished saying this, many people flew from the camp onto the mountaintop. "City Master, let's attack." They are afraid. Yes, it is a great chance. Everyone spoke over each other as they urged Zhua Mo to act. They were the leaders of the various factions. Zhua Mo smiled, and a rare expression of solemnity came onto his face. Everyone. Once he spoke, the noisy crowd instantly quieted. First, there is something that needs to be told to everyone. Zuemo looked at the surroundings and said, "After this matter is over, we will be leaving Sky Water Jia." These people were all heads, and were smart people. Some were puzzled, some were dazed, but they all had thoughtful expressions. But the great majority of everyone will be remaining here. Those people, Zuemo pointed at the Xiozha in the sky, are mostly normal Xiozha. If they are killed, we can dust off our asses and leave, no problem. But what about you? How will you establish yourselves in Skywater Jia? It isn't too great of a problem to offend Cloud Divine Sect and Wood Sword Sect, but if you offend all of Skywater Jia, there will be no place for you in Skywater Jia. Everyone has come here to seek a chance at survival. No one wants to have come out of Little Mountain Jia and still fight every day. Zuomo's words caused everyone to be speechless. This one will remember and accept everyone's goodwill, and is very grateful. This 100-Flower Valley, and this victory is gifted to everyone. After today, there will be more Xiozha that have rushed here. Why don't you build a city here? If everyone is able to work together, with the precedent of Wood Sword Camp and Flying Cloud Camp, no one would dare to make trouble. This way, everyone can have safe and secure days. In the dark, Zuomo's smile was like sunlight, his eyes black and bright as they attracted everyone's gaze. After the dark of the night came the light of dawn. Many Little Mountain Jia Xiozha came from all directions to Bright Water City, but before they could hurry to Bright Water City, the news of the Master of Golden Crow City's great victory, and the destruction of the Wood Sword and Flying Cloud camps seemed to grow wings and spread throughout all of Sky Water Jia. The entire Jia was shocked. Just as the large factions of Skywater Jia speculated on the future, the news that a city was being built in 100-Flower Valley spread through Skywater Jia. The new city was called Little Mountain City. Every Little Mountain Jia Xiozha that was hurrying towards Bright Water City was re-energized and traveled day and night to fly towards 100-Flower Valley. In a short few days, almost half of all the Little Mountain Jia Xiozha had gathered in 100-Flower Valley. All of the major factions in Skywater Jia were attentively watching the movements of 100-Flower Valley. They had originally assumed that Wood Sword Sect and Cloud Divine Sect would use their entire sect to exact vengeance, but unexpectedly, both sects maintained their silence and did not act. By this time, almost 8/10 of Little Mountain Jia Xiozha had gathered in 100-Flower Valley, and it was very busy. The Master of Golden Crow City, who was the subject of great hope, had closed his doors to guests and cultivated every day. "You aren't going to help them?" Gong Sun Cha asked. "This isn't something we should be involved in." Zuoemo shook his head and then muttered, "Gu feels burdened with just the amount of people there already is. If there is any more people, Ji will find a tree and hang himself." "Oh, that's right." Lil Mis nodded his head and smacked his lips. He said regretfully, "We didn't gain much from this battle. A little unprofitable." These words poked Zuomo's wound. He couldn't help but have an expression of heartache. They had invested greatly in this big victory. Just the dozen sonic lightning walnuts were an astounding expense, but there were no spoils. It was the first time they had a battle with just expenses and no gains. It will count as thanks to them, Zuoemo comforted himself, but the heartache in his words didn't lessen. Feeling the strong effect this topic had on him, Zuoemo decided to change the topic. He turned and asked Shulong, "How is A1? Is he adjusting well? What about those flower slaves?" Shulong respectfully said, "A1's injuries should completely heal in about a fortnight. The flower slaves are much better after cultivating the spell that Darren taught them, but their situation will take some time until it can be clearly determined." "That's good." Zuoemo felt his mood was much better. Who said it? Doing good deeds made one feel better. Even though it did not feel as good as Jingshi, but Zuomo's mood became much lighter. The clouds suddenly started to gather in the sky above 100-Flower Valley. In less than 10 breaths there were dark clouds. The sky turned dark, and a pressuring mood filled all of 100-Flower Valley. Zuoemo suddenly stood up, his face full of shock. "It's Yeshan." Chapter 323. Core Formation. The entire 100-Flower Valley started to move. Core Formation. Someone was having their core formation. Compared to entering the Zhuji and Ningmai stages, forming the core made a much bigger spectacle. The sky had just been full of light, but now it was covered in dark clouds. It was possible to see lightning snakes among the clouds, and 5-colored auroras flowing by. Many people couldn't help but have admiring expressions. Everyone caused different apparitions when they were forming their core. The exact nature of the apparition was related to the Xiujia's own spells, and the laws that they comprehended. The changes of the world during core formation was extremely important to a Xiujia, because it was the first step for a Xiujia to comprehend the higher levels of the world's rules. Higher-leveled rules and deeper comprehension began with the apparition during core formation. Stepping into this door was a brand new world. This was core formation. The core formation that countless people dreamed about. Every Xiujia that entered Ningmai had a dream, core formation. For the great majority of Xiujia, Jindan was the highest target they perused. It meant greater power, higher status, more Jingshi, and a freer life. In places like Sky Moon Jia and Sky Water Jia, a Jindan was a warlord, and if they didn't want to waste time on mortal matters, any sect would welcome them with the status of an elder. The tempting benefits meant you did not have to worry about materials or Jingshi. You had great amounts of time to do anything you wanted. To get all these benefits, you only needed to become a Jindan. The black clouds in the sky roiled. The 5-colored aurora would occasionally become rainbows that then extinguished. It was very attractive. The mood became even tenser. Zuomo's mouth was open wide as he looked dazedly at the sky. This was the first time he saw the process of core formation, and it gave him an enormous shock. The black clouds in the sky, the rainbows that were born and died, all of this shocked him. His consciousness was very strong, and his sensitivity to Ling power surpassed any Xiujia inside the valley. He could clearly feel the terrifying Ling power that was contained here. The Ling power within a 300 li radius had suddenly concentrated the moment the black clouds formed. The Ling power had all flowed into this ball of black clouds. If these black clouds exploded, the power it would release would far surpass the power of 12 sonic lightning walnut exploding simultaneously. The entire 100-flower valley would turn to dust. Even Zuo, with his great day Mo physique, would not be able to avoid this calamity. The pressure that was released by the black clouds was purely caused by the sheer enormous volume of Ling power it contained. Zuomo's expression suddenly became extremely ugly. He noticed many Xiujia didn't retreat, but went closer. Core formation was a rare event and had a fatal attraction for everyone. If they could see a bit, it definitely would be of benefit. This group of people didn't want to live. Zuo swore inside and stopped the people going forward. It is dangerous. Come back. Everyone retreat out of 100-flower valley. Fortunately, Zuo held great authority among this group of people. Everyone hesitated, but they all quickly left 100-flower valley. 100-flower valley was very close to Brightwater City. Such a strong flow of Ling power had disturbed all of Brightwater City. Xiujia from Brightwater City continually flew out of Brightwater City to look in the direction of 100-flower valley. After that night's battle, the Xiujia of Brightwater City changed their attitudes towards the Little Mountain Jia Xiujia, who were led by the master of Golden Crow City, especially Jindan Xiujia. The ambush during the night had completely destroyed Wood Sword Camp, including one Jindan. Up until now, there were 5 or 6 Jindan that had died in the hands of the master of Golden Crow City. This was a number that no one could dismiss. If it was 1 or 2, it could be said to be luck, but 5 or 6 was not something that could be explained by luck. This was why the heavily wounded Wood Sword Sect and Cloud Divine Sect did not launch a counterattack. In the eyes of normal Xiujia, the power of the master of Golden Crow City was immeasurable. They also found that the construction of Little Mountain City did not affect their lives. These Xiujia that came from Little Mountain Jia were not as brutal and evil as they had originally imagined. They were very generous and were deeply liked by merchants. Many merchants planned on going to Little Mountain City and open up a store. Core formation, they have someone becoming a Jindan. In the sky, Yin Yang's expression was dark. A malicious look flashed through his eyes. He was silently for a moment before he said, "Yes, they have become even stronger." When the figures of Vermilion Bird Camp appeared in the sky, Hichio sighed. The name of Vermilion Bird Camp had spread through Skywater Jia. Everyone knew of them. The appearance of this troop meant that the master of Golden Crow City was still wary of them. Yin Yang did not make a sound. He stared viciously at Vermilion Bird Camp that was swimming through the air. It was this troop that had sent Wood Sword Camp to their deaths, and had taken the life of his beloved disciple. He definitely would avenge this grievance. His gaze was dark. The elders of the sect did not agree to allow him using stronger measures. No elder was willing to fight. This was why he had remained inactive up until now. He did his best to control the hatred in his heart. He was very clear that only an unconventional move could help him avenge this grievance. In the entire Skywater Jia, no sect would publicly stand with him and become enemies with the master of Golden Crow City. Yin Yang did his best to suppress it, but how could he conceal it from the eyes of Hichio, who had been his opponent for more than 10 years? Hichio instantly knew Yin Yang's thoughts, but he did not speak of it. If Yin Yang wanted to jump into the fire pit, he wouldn't stop the other. At this time, 5 colored aurora lights suddenly light up the thick cloud layer above Hundred Flower Valley. It was possible to see the shape of a rainbow-colored ling beast swimming inside. Zuomo's expression was nervous. Xieshan had reached the most crucial time of a core formation. He could feel Xieshan was continuously absorbing ling power from the clouds. That ling beast that was blurry was very resistant to Xieshan absorbing ling power. Xieshan didn't seem to be in a hurry, and just continuously drew out ling power. 2 hours passed. Xieshan was still absorbing ling power. Zuomo was filled with shock. Up until now, he could generally estimate how much ling power Xieshan had drawn out from the clouds. Jindan Xiuzha were definitely monsters. The amount of ling power in a Ningmai could not compare to what a Jindan could contain. No wonder people commonly say that Jindan and Ningmai were 2 different worlds. Pu Yao appeared out of nowhere. You don't have to be jealous of him. He has a deep base, which is why he has caused such an apparition while he is forming the golden core. If you grasp all 6 transformations of the Great Day Mo physique, other than some rare powerful Jindan, no other Jindan will be a match for you. Really? Zuomo didn't quite believe it. Before today, he hadn't been as fearful of Jindan as he had been in the past, but the powerful apparition of Xieshan's core formation today had once again shown him the power of Jindan Xiuzha. To be ranked second among Brigadier Mo physiques, how could it not have any powerful qualities? Pu Yao smirked coldly. His direction changed. Even if you do not use the Great Day Mo physique, you still don't have to be afraid of him. How so? Zuomo was slightly interested. After Pu Yao had gotten a Jindan last time, he had become much more energized and was chattier. What surprised Zuomo the most was that this guy was much more generous than he was in the past. He didn't hide things like spells and Yao arts like he had before. If you cultivate great Thousand Leaf Hands and little Thousand Leaf Hands, even a Jindan isn't a threat. Pu Yao said proudly. Please, Zuomo smirked scornfully. Who are you trying to fool? I've practiced these too. The power isn't bad, but it isn't enough to take down a Jindan. How much have you cultivated? Pu Yao volleyed back with the same scornful tone. It is a waste for them to have landed on your hands. Your brain isn't very good. Just cultivate Great Day Mo physique. That is most suited to people with able limbs and simple minds. He then glanced disdainfully at Zuomo. Our Yao cultivation has much more to consider than the dumb Mo. Zuomo was not willing to show weakness. He said with a cold smile. Really? But why haven't I ever seen it from this honored Sky Yao? Pu Yao had a deep hint of mirth at the corner of his mouth. No problem, I can let you see. Zuomo's pupils suddenly shrank. A black dot suddenly appeared in front of Pu Yao. A black dot that was bottomless. When the black dot appeared, it expanded and swallowed the surrounding space at a rapid speed. Zuomo could only stare as the surroundings were being swallowed. His body could not move. In the black void, Zuomo faced Pu Yao. This? What Yao art is this? Zuomo gaped as he stammered. He looked in all directions. Everything was a black void. Pu Yao lowered his head slightly, his blood-red pupil narrowing into a line, and the thin lips slightly curved. Night restriction, a very obscure Yao art. Finishing, he gave a strange smile. You are nervous? Cough. Hearing this, Zuomo pretended to cough. Nonsense. Just a Yao art that is used for scares and you want to make Ji nervous. You underestimate Ji. Zuomo then said suspiciously. Pooh, you've recovered your power? A little bit. Just a golden core, there wasn't much primary essence. Zuomo sweat when he heard this. Pu Yao's tone made it seem like he was saying a mosquito didn't have much meat. Those were jindan, not lettuce. What do you want to do by bringing me to this dark place? Zuomo's expression was righteous. I'm telling you I have no interest in Yao. In the future, I will find a beautiful female Xiao to marry. I'm very interested in you. Pu Yao stared with interest at Zuomo like he was seeing some peerless treasure. His eye was red and shiny. Zuomo's hair rose at his gaze. That Pu Xieshan is undergoing core formation. I've never seen a core formation. If I miss this chance, it will be hard to encounter one again. Look. There's nothing to see in a core formation. Pu Yao narrowed up his eyes again and froze Zuomo's heart. Pu Yao didn't seem normal today. Zuomo's heart was beating. An abnormal Pu Yao was much scarier than any jindan. It was out of my expectations that you could cultivate to great day Mo physique. Pu Yao glanced at Zuomo and said lightly, the great day Mo physique is unyielding and powerful. I've only seen one Mo successfully reach it. 10 years later, I discovered he died. Died? How did he die? Zuomo instinctively asked. They failed and died during advancement. If Xiozha failed during advancement, they fail, and they themselves are not damaged. But the progression of a Mo physique is very dangerous. If it fails, then their soul is destroyed. Pu Yao's words were like the sharp cold wind of the winter, making Zuomo's face turn pale white. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.